What's up, people? About time I finally got here, huh? Had some things going on tonight. That's all right. That's the way life goes sometimes. We're going to hop into some authentic and true histories of pirates and buccaneers tonight. I've mentioned before, there's only really four historically held, authentic, and true accounts of a buccaneer or a pirate or anyone that was involved that's given a real first-hand account. Two of those are basically unembellished, and one of those is very short. It's just a small personal tale. Two of them are considered fairly well embellished. I mean, mostly true, but embellished to a point. There's only one long form, true and authentic personal account of a buccaneer that was there and that sailed with many of the most famous pirates that you've heard of as a barber surgeon. And he was at also a lot of very, very famous raids. He was involved in a lot of crazy shit. So that's the over the course of the episodes I do on the Buccaneers and the Pirates, which I plan to do a fairly long series to get it all covered. But to start, we're going to start with that, or begin with that very very long form first-hand account of a buccaneer named John Esquemeling. Esquemeling. I'm trying to pronounce it the right way. He's Dutch. But yeah, that's the first one we're going to start with tonight. And we're going to start, I'm going to probably just go through like the first 3 or 4 chapters of the book, the account of his life as a buccaneer and a pirate. We're going to touch a little, we'll do a little bit of the introduction, kind of explain who he is, and then we'll give another small explanation of how he became a member of the Brethren of the Coast. Once we get through there, we will jump forward just a little bit to discuss exactly how the pirates outfitted their ships and the rules and regulations that they set forward for all of their voyages. I think that's about what we'll cover tonight. We'll have a little bit of some of the first accounts of a couple of the acts of piracy, or not really raids. I don't want to say that because those didn't happen until later. But in the introduction to this man's life, once he becomes a pirate, and in his explanations of the things that came before him, we will certainly touch on a couple of those acts of piracy. So let's see who we've got going on in here tonight. And then we'll find some kind of background music. I just wanted to play that to open up with. I thought that was pretty appropriate. Let me see what we got going on here. Let me turn that off. Oh, okay. All right. Looks like we had some people waiting for a while. But if you're still around, or if you hear me later on, if you come back, I see that William Wallace was in here, Mob Rat Hunter, Mustang Mike. I see DJ. What's up, bro? How you doing? Good to see you. But yeah, it's pretty late on a Tuesday night. We'll see who actually ends up showing up for a while I do the show live. But in either case, I've been wanting to do this for a while. This and obviously I'm going to be doing a lot of episodes on Alexander. Also, I just have to figure out a night. I might alternate. We'll see how it goes. I want to try and do at least one night a week where I talk about and cover the histories of the pirates, and then we'll see how it works out. Maybe I'll do another night, a week, or maybe for Alexander. Maybe I'll alternate and just do like every other week. We'll see how it goes. Let me go ahead and take that off there. Pull this up. Yeah, so the first, what's up, Mike? As I mentioned before, what's up, Cranky? Well, I'm glad you find this topic fascinating, because not a lot of people know about these unless you really, get into the history of it all and do some digging and really explore the subject. I've spoken to many people that are very into pirates and buccaneers and stuff, and they had no idea that there was actually certified, historically accurate, firsthand accounts of people that were actually there for this stuff. And if you're just coming in, I'll mention one more time before we move forward that there's only 4, that are held by historians and people in the know. There's only 4 accounts, 4 people, really, I guess the best way to put that would be 4 people that wrote firsthand accounts of their experiences with the pirates and the buccaneers. Of those 4, 2 are fairly well embellished. They're true, but there's a lot of embellishment in them. One of them is a short story that only covers about a year of a man's life when he kind of got stranded in the Isthmus of Panama. All 4 of these people knew each other, which is the greatest part of telling this story, which is if you explore this entire series with me, we will go through all 4 of these books, and I'll explain everything about the authors and the people and stuff like that. But if you read all of these accounts, these books, right, by the authors, these 4 men that were actually there, you'll learn that these guys knew each other and bumped into each other fairly often. And there's actually a couple of very sad parts in their books when they discover when one of them has died, including, as I mentioned, there's 4 accounts. I said that 2 of them were fairly well embellished. One of them is short, but one of them is a long form tale of a man's life who was a member of the Brethren of the Coast. His name was John Esquemeling. He was a Dutch. He arrived in Tortuga in 1666, July, actually, of 1666. That man's account is held to be the one and only long-form account without embellishment of a true buccaneer and pirate, a man that was there from the beginning practically, and who sailed with some of the most famous pirates you've heard of, including Captain Morgan. He was there for some of the gnarliest exploits ever by buccaneers and pirates, including the taking of Panama. We're going to go through lots of stuff, lots of cool stuff. He crossed the Isthmus of Panama twice. Absolutely amazing. And his book is called The Pirates or Buccaneers of America. It's called The Pirates of Panama. Some people refer to it as the Buccaneers of America, but it's called The Pirates of Panama, a true account of the famous adventures and daring deeds of Sir Henry Morgan and other notorious freebooters of the Spanish Main, by John Esquemeling, one of the buccaneers who was present at those tragedies. You'll find that a lot of really old books have really long titles. They try and kind of explain everything to you instead of having a preface, right? They put all of that in the title in a lot of really, really old books, right? So the title of this book literally is The Pirates of Panama, a true account of the famous adventures and daring deeds of Sir Henry Morgan and other notorious freebooters of the Spanish Main, by John Esquemeling, one of the buccaneers who was present at those tragedies. Like I said, we're going to open up first with a little bit of an introduction. We'll move forward into how our main character, John Esquemeling, ended up in Tortuga in the first place. and then how he became a member of the Brethren of the Coast. And then from there, I think tonight we'll move on to a description by our main character of how pirates outfitted their ships and regulated their voyages, right? So let me get a sip of my drink and hit my bowl. Everybody smoke them if you got them, pack one up, take a drink, whatever you're into, whatever your vice, or just kick back, get comfortable and relax. Because Rat Trap's going to read you a story. And while I tell you this story, if you're anything like me, I'm really into this stuff. And when I read books, you know, I have a strong imagination. I like to imagine what it would be like to really be there, you know, in some of these places, beyond the ships or beyond the dock or beyond this, you know, wild island in 1666, when everything you have is made by hand, right? There's no ready-made restaurants. There's no fucking even inkling of what an internet could be or what a phone could be, right? You can't even send letters to people unless you put it on a ship. Most people are indentured servants. You're lucky if you're free. This is like an absolutely insane time. People are exploring the world. You know, people are still very much exploring the world. William Wallace, just lighting bowl of standard mix. I don't know what that is, bro. You mean tobacco? Hey, whatever, man. That's what I said. Pack it up, smoke what you got, you know. So the introduction, again, to the Pirates of Panama, a true account of the famous adventures and daring deeds of Sir Henry Morgan and other notorious freebooters of the Spanish Main by John Esquemeling, one of the buccaneers who was present at those tragedies. This volume that I'm reading to you was originally written in Dutch by John Esquemeling and first published in Amsterdam in 1678 under the title of Die Amerikanen Zeeroovers. It immediately became very popular, and this first-hand history of the Buccaneers of America was translated into the principal European languages. The first English edition of this was printed in 1684. Of the author, John Esquemeling, very little is known, although it's generally conceded that in all probability he was a Hollander. It's a natural supposition as his first works were written in the Dutch language. He came to the island of Tortuga, the headquarters of the Buccaneers, in 1666, in the employ of the French West India Company. Several years later, that same company, owing to like unsuccessful business arrangements, they recalled all of their representatives back to France and gave their officers order to sell the company's land and all of its servants. Esquemeling was then a servant of the company, and he was sold to this fucking horrific stern master who was extremely cruel to him and treated him like shit, which was not uncommon at all back in those days. Beyond just the hard work and like almost no food, John Esquemeling in horrible living conditions, and he got really sick. Instead of letting this guy die and losing all of his money, his stern master sold him to a surgeon. We're going to hear a little bit more about that when we get into the actual account from our main character. Again, this is an introduction. But the surgeon that bought him treated him really kindly and taught him the apprentice, and like gave him a solid year, if I remember correctly, before we actually get to the part in the book. Gave him a solid year of apprenticeship on how to be a barber surgeon. So his new master was really kind to him. And obviously he, nursed him back to health and got him in good shape, fed him well and all that kind of stuff. And after 1 year's service, he was set at liberty upon a promise that he would pay the surgeon a price of 100 pieces of 8 at such time he found himself in funds, right? So the surgeon basically took him in, right? He bought him, took him in, took care of him, got him back to health, for a whole year, taught him the trade and treated him as like an apprentice and an assistant instead of just, a slave. And at the end of that year, he said, I'm going to let you go and be free. But you have to promise me that as soon as you come into some money or you're able to save it up, that you will pay me the 100 pieces of 8 that I paid for you in the first place so I can have my money back. And this guy was like, hell yeah, right? John Esquemeling, he's like, of course, dude, you're going to make me fucking free. Remember, a lot of these people back then would be like 6 or 7 years you'd be indentured, right? And if at any time somebody else bought you, that time would start over. Imagine that. That's how these people ended up doing lifetime service. You would imagine you were like 3 or 4 years into your service with a family and something happened. They moved, they got killed, whatever. You get sold to somebody else, your 7 years would start all over again. So this guy, even though it really sucked for him in the beginning, he actually lucked the fuck out, because he came across a guy that was nice, wanted to see him free and taken care of. And all he did was make him promise that he would come back and pay him when he came into some money. Now that he was a free man, he determined that since he didn't we're going to get to that part again also when we read what he has to say. But in the introduction, it says, once now he was a free man, he determined to join the pirates and was received into their society and remained with them until 1672. Esquemeling served the buccaneers in the capacity of barber surgeon, as I mentioned, and was present at all of their exploits. Little did he suspect that his first-hand observations would someday be cherished as the only authentic and true history of the buccaneers and marooners of the Spanish Main. And then it just goes on to say, from time to time, new editions of this work have been published, but in many cases, the new material was, kind of embellished. And this is one of the oldest copies here that I'm reading to you from. Let me go ahead and skip down to his account and how he got the Tortuga. All right, here we go. Oh, I haven't been paying attention. Let me say hi to some of the people that came into the chat while I've been reading. What's up, Mickey? Good to see you. Dustin, Jason, Carol. Good to see all of you. If I'm missing you, then I apologize. But yeah, so now we're going to get into the very first chapter, the introduction. And this is from the author, from John Esquemeling. These are his words now. And chapter 1, again, also very long title, is the introduction. The author sets forward the Western Islands in the service of the West India Company of France. They meet with an English frigate and arrive in the island of Tortuga. All right, so these are the words of John Esquemeling. We set sail from France on a ship called St. John, May 2nd, 1666. Our vessel was equipped with 28 guns, 20 mariners, and 220 passengers, including those whom the company did send as free passengers. Soon after, we came to an anchor under the Cape, there to join 7 other ships of the same West India Company, which were to come from Dieppe under convoy of a man of war, mounted with 37 guns and 250 men. Of these ships, 2 were bound into the Atlantic for some island there, 5 for the Caribbean islands, and ours for Tortuga. Here gathered to us about 20 sail of other ships as well, bound for Newfoundland, with some Dutch vessels as well going to St. Martin, so that in all we made 30 sail. Here we put ourselves in a posture of defense against pirates and the English, having noticed that 4 English frigates of 60 guns each waited for us. So our admiral, having given necessary orders, we sailed with a favorable gale and some mists arising. We were able to the mists arising totally impeded the English frigates from discovering our fleet. I'm sorry. Then they steered I'll make this a short version. They steered their way into the Atlantic. They escaped a French privateer that was trying to rob them. They went through a bunch of these really weird ancient, like mariner ceremonies. Like people would dress up in odd clothes and like use a wooden sword to kind of like knight people that had never been through certain dangerous passages before. Just, old seaman stuff is pretty cool. Okay, where's it at? It says, where's it at? Okay, they ran into a storm. They had to go the long way around Haiti, and then they directed their course to the Isle of Tortuga. They passed along the coast of Puerto Rico, which he says is extremely agreeable and delightful to the sight, being adorned with beautiful woods, even to the tops of mountains. Then we discovered Hispaniola, which is Haiti, and we coasted about it until we came to the north side of Tortuga, our desired port. Here we anchored July 7th, 1666. Not having lost one man in the voyage, we landed the goods that belonged to the West India Company, and soon after the ship was sent back with some passengers. Then it goes on to describe that the Spanish, it's called Tortuga because Tortuga de Mar means tortoise of the sea. He describes the island. It's like mountainous, has a lot of rocky cliffs and stuff like that. And in the middle, there's kind of like lowlands and low country where there's a lot of different kinds of cows and different wild beasts, right? Boars and shit like that the French hunt. He also describes back and forth a general quick history of the Spanish and the problems between the Spanish and the French and how the buccaneers were formed. So I'll just go ahead and tell you, this is like really, really, really long version in this book. So I'm going to tell you the short version. I'll tell you the rat trap version. Let me scroll down to where I'm going to be going now. All right. I don't think I need any of that. All right, all long book stuff. I think this is the stuff I'm about to make into a short version. Okay, so basically what happened, he, as it says in the introduction, once he was sold, he went down and he joined up with the Brethren of the Coast. Well, he has been living on Tortuga for about a year and a half prior to that, and he'd already started to meet some of these hunters who you would think of as buccaneers, and he already started to kind of get like a little bit of the history about what had gone on. And basically, at first, there was only like a dozen Spanish that would kind of travel back and forth between Haiti and Tortuga, just kind of like making sure nobody else was there, because like the Spanish had claimed a lot of those lands. Obviously, everybody here knows that, I'm sure. But because they were smaller and nobody was like really concerned about them at the time, there was only about a dozen Spanish that would kind of cruise from the north side of Haiti to Tortuga and back every once in a while. And there was a group of French hunters, for all intents. Really, they were guys that made hides. They would hunt and stuff like that, but they would eat the meat and all that, and they would keep the hides and all that kind of thing. So they'd make leather and shit like that. Once the Spanish figured out that more and more French were gathering on Tortuga and like basically taking the island over, that's when the shit hit the fan. The Spanish sent for reinforcements, and then over the course of about 4 years, it went tit for tat, right? The Spanish would come in, run off the French. The French would have to go and hide in the woods in Haiti, and then they would make it back to Tortuga. Eventually, the French won the day. I guess that's the way to put it. They built a fort like way up in some like this crag. The only way to get to it was at the top of this cliff, right? You had to go up. The fort was at the top of a cliff. There's a small crag in the rock that they built a ladder in. It was like the only way up there, and they would defend from that position. And they killed a lot of fucking Spanish, and they finally just kind of gave up and let the French have Tortuga. Well, they start trading and all that shit, and then finally the Spanish come through one more good time and just like burn everything down and run the hunters into the woods of Tortuga. They can't even escape. So that's where they live for a long time, and they basically live with the Caribbean Indians who teach them to smoke meat. Well, these guys are like, okay, well, this is our new business, right? Instead of just doing hides and shit like that, we're going to start smoking meat, going down to the beaches and just selling them to the ships that come by and people that stop on the island to water. And when we can get rid of the Spanish, we'll sell it on the other side of the island too, where we'll get even, more business. Well, on the way that the Caribbean Indians taught these Frenchmen to smoke meat was on a big rack, kind of like think of like a wide version of a ladder, right? They would build this big rack, but they were just thin poles, 4 or 5 racks high. And you would hang the meat over that, and then the smoke would rise up. Well, the Frenchmen called that rack a boucan. They called the smoking rack a boucan. As people would come and buy meat from these guys, they eventually came up with the word for the people that smoked the meat, and they called them a buccaneer. As time went on, the English and other people bastardized the French word boucanier into buccaneer. So these were the original buccaneers, right? These French hunters, also intermixed with mostly Dutch and some Indians, right? And what they called mulattoes, which were like mixtures of the slaves and the African slaves, and it could be an Indian or a Dutch. Usually it was an Indian. But these were the original buccaneers. Okay, I'm just scrolling through this thing real quick so I can grab my place. All right. Okay, so we'll just skip up to chapter 4. Original of the most famous pirates of the coasts of America, famous exploits of Pierre le Grand. Our main character, John Esquemeling, says, I have told you in the preceding chapters how I was compelled to adventure my life among the pirates of America. Which sort of men I name so, because they are not authorized by any sovereign prince, on several occasions sent their ambassadors to the kings of England and France. People have sent them to see those kings, to complain of the molestations and troubles those pirates often caused on the coast of America, even in the calm of peace. It's always been answered that such men did not commit those acts of hostility and piracy as subjects to their majesties. So basically, what he's saying is these kings and higher ups in these countries would always complain to each other about the pirates robbing them, but these were the people that they had fucked with, or sometimes the people that they would send against each other. That everybody basically knew what was going on. Nobody wanted to admit it. The King of France would tell others that he had no fortress or a castle upon Haiti, neither did he receive a farthing of tribute from thence. If anything, he wishes to tax the people that are there. The King of England adjoined that he had never given any commissions to those of Jamaica to commit hostilities against the subject of his Catholic Majesty, which is 100% bullshit. they basically all claimed that they could not prevent these pirates from acting, but they were all robbing each other or watching it go down and kind of hoping that the other one would get fucked up by a different one, right? The first pirate that was known upon Tortuga was a man named Pierre le Grand, or Peter the Great. He was born in Normandy. That action which rendered him famous was his taking the vice admiral of the Spanish flota near the Cape of Tiburon on the west side of Hispaniola. This he performed with only one boat and 28 men. Now till that time, the Spaniards had passed and repassed with all security through the channel of Bahama, so that Pierre le Grand, setting out to sea by the Caicos, he took this great ship with all the ease imaginable. The Spaniards they found aboard, they set ashore and sent the vessel to France. The manner how this undaunted spirit attempted and took this large ship I shall give you out of the journal of the author himself, and in his own words. The boat, says he, wherein Pierre le Grand was with his companions, had been at sea a long time without finding any prize worth taking. And all their provisions beginning to fail, they were in danger of starving. Being almost reduced to despair, they spied a great ship of the Spanish flota, separated from all the rest. This vessel they resolved to take or die in the attempt. Hereupon they sailed towards her to view her strength, and though they judged the vessel to be superior to theirs, they wanted that motherfucker bad, and the extremity that they were reduced to made them venture upon it anyway. Being come so near that they could not possibly escape, they made an oath to their captain Pierre le Grand to stand by him to the last. 'Tis true the pirates did believe they should find the ship unprovided to fight, and thereby the sooner master her. It was in the dusk of the evening they began to attack. But before they engaged, they ordered the surgeon of the boat to bore a hole in the sides of it, that their own vessel sinking under them, they might be compelled to attack more vigorously and endeavor more hastily to board the ship. That's insane. That's insane. They're in this fucking smaller boat. They're about to take this huge boat, right? They're starving to death at sea, right? They haven't found anything that they've been able to steal. They haven't found anything that they can take. No boat. They finally see this series of Spanish ships floating together, but they see that one of them's kind of straggled off. They get up next to it, knowing they're overpowered, and they said, you know what? Let's fucking drill a hole in our own boat, so that nobody can fucking shit out, right? Nobody can give up. Everybody has to go, and it's going to make you work. It says right here, it says, it's going to make us work even faster to get up on that boat and fucking out of this one. That shit's intense, man. So, okay, so we're going to drill the hole in the thing. So this was done accordingly and without any other arms than a pistol in one hand and a sword in the other. You got to love that. Without any other arms other than a pistol in one hand and a sword in the other, they immediately climbed up the sides of the ship and ran all together into the great cabin, where they found the captain with several of his companions playing cards. Here they set a pistol to his breast, commanding him to deliver up the ship. The Spaniards, surprised to see the pirates on board their ship, cried, Jesus bless us, are these devils or what? What are they? Where did you come from? Meanwhile, some of them took possession of the gun room and seized the arms, killing as many as made any opposition whatsoever, whereupon the Spaniards presently surrendered. That very day, the captain of the ship had been told by some of the seamen that the boat which was in view cruising was a boat of pirates, whom the captain slightly answered, what then, must I be afraid of such a pitiful thing as that? No, though they were a ship as big and as strong as mine is, maybe. As soon as Pierre le Grand had taken the rich prize, he detained in his service as many of the common seamen as he had need of, setting the rest ashore, and then set sail for France, where he continued without ever returning to America again. So that was the first tale of buccaneering or piracy that happened right off the coast of Tortuga. It's pretty cool. Some guys they'd been driven off of their own island by the Spanish. I mean, think about that, right? So first you try and be a hunter, you run the fuck off, you're at war with these people, right? Then you're just wanting to, make your hides and sell them to people. Your group has gotten even smaller, but you're finally back there on Tortuga. 3 and 4, 5, 6 times this happens. Finally you have a big battle. Everybody brings reinforcements. You're able to stay for a while. Then you get run off for the very last time into the middle of the island. You have nowhere to go. You have nothing at all. You're living with the Indians. They teach you to smoke meat. You're like, okay, we're going to try again. You come up with the idea, we're going to sell this smoked meat, right? Through that action, you get the name buccaneer. It doesn't even mean what we think it means now. At that time, it meant the guy that smoked the fucking meat, right? The guy that sold beef jerky. But then the Spanish come through and fuck all that shit up too. They're running the ships off, right? The people that come in to buy the meat from you, they can't make it to the shore. They're getting run the fuck off by the Spanish. Your stuff's getting fucked up. They, when they were trying to get rid of these guys, the Spanish brought in a bunch of mastiffs and let them go on the fucking island, hoping that the mastiffs would fucking kill the Indians and the meat smoker, the fucking buccaneers. So these guys had, they were just like, what the fuck are we going to do, man? They got in a boat and they were like, we're going to have to rob somebody, right? What else are you supposed to do? They're like, it's time to, it's time. We got to start robbing people. They get a couple of small boats here and there, but then they're just sitting out there in the ocean. Nothing's coming around. The only things that do come by are way too big and powerful for them to mess with, right? And remember, there's 28 guys. That's how many people we're talking about that are left that have all ganged up together to try and survive in the unknown, right? They get in their boat. They're out there in the ocean. They're chilling. They get so desperate, they're fucking starving. They don't have any water. There's no place you can just go stop, right? There's no fucking ports, nothing like that anywhere around. And they finally see this big Spanish ship. And they're like, fuck it. It's our only chance, right? If we're going to live, we have to go take this boat or we're going to die out here. And then just as an extra measure, right at the last moment, they drill a hole in the bottom of their own boat so that nobody can punk out and that everybody will just raise hell getting up the side of that boat, all with a fucking pistol and a sword, dude. And they make it into the captain's area, and the captain and the people in there freak out. They're like thinking these dudes are ghosts. They're just sailing in the ocean. Like, where the fuck did you come from? Yeah. Pretty cool though, man. The first act of buccaneers off the coast of Tortuga. It's pretty awesome. All right. The planters and hunters of Tortuga had no sooner heard of the rich prize that those pirates had taken, that they themselves now resolved to follow that same example. This is the birth of Tortuga, like the pirate town that you think of, like the shit that they show in Pirates of the Caribbean that everybody knows, right? That Tortuga, the wild, insane streets of nothing but pirates. This is the beginning of that. So hereupon, many of them left their employments and endeavored to get some small boats. So they're all quitting their jobs, right? They hear about Pierre le Grand. They hear about this big boat that they took. All these people that are on the island still starving, trying to figure out what the fuck they're going to do. Even people that had jobs quit them. Think about that. They're like, we're going to steal. right? Think about that collectively. All these people are like, we are going a pirating, right? We're fucking going to go do this shit. So it says many of them left their employments and endeavored to get some small boats wherein they could exercise piracy. But not being able to purchase or build them at Tortuga, they resolved to set forth in their canoes and seek them elsewhere. With these, they cruised at first upon Cape de Alvarez, where the Spaniards used to trade from one city to another in small vessels in which they carry hides, tobacco, and other commodities, over to Cuba in Havana, and to which the Spaniards from Europe do frequently resort. Okay, so they couldn't really get a hold of any boats on Tortuga. There was nothing to steal. So these fuckers jumped in their canoes and headed over closer to Haiti and started cruising around in their canoes looking for boats to steal. Here it was that those pirates at first took a great many boats laden with a lot of commodities. These they used to carry back to Tortuga and sell the whole purchase to the ships that waited for their return or accidentally happened to be there when they got back. With the gains of these prizes, they provided themselves with all of the necessities they hadn't had before, wherewith to undertake other voyages now also, some of which were made to Campeche and others towards New Spain, in which the Spaniards then drove a great trade. Upon those coasts, they found great numbers of trading vessels and often ships of great burden. Two of the biggest of these vessels and two great ships which the Spaniards had laden with gold and silver in the port of Campeche to go to the Caracas, they took in less than a month's time and carried back to Tortuga. That's pretty wild. Man, that's a long time to be going after a boat and fighting some bitches to get off. I mean, if the boat's filled with gold and silver, that's cool. We're going after them, right? But think about that shit. You're like at the mercy of the tides and the winds and stuff. It said it took them a month. Yeah, and they said took it in less than a month's time. You know, like that's wild, man. That's wild. Yeah. All right, so they carried all those riches back to Tortuga, where the people of the whole island, and now encouraged by their success, especially seeing in 2 years the riches of the country so much increased, they augmented the number of pirates so fast that in a little time there were in that small island and port above 20 ships at any given time filled with these sorts of people. So think about that shit. Within the course of a year, from when Pierre le Grand, right, there was 28 of these guys, right, that had finally fucking had it and went out to go stealing and robbing and pirating. They finally got that big ship and they just sailed the fuck off. Everybody else on the island that was left heard about that shit and they got in their canoes and went out to steal boats themselves. And then they stole more boats and they stole more boats and they got bolder and bolder and went further and further from home, until they finally grabbed a hold of they chased this fucking Spanish boat for what, call it 2 or 3 weeks. It's less than a month. They finally got it. It's filled with gold and silver. They bring it back, right? And then in the course of another year, right? Isn't that what it says? In the course of another year, it goes from being this small town number of people, right, to where they're all rich now. Shit's blowing up, and at any given time there's 20 foot like big ships in the harbor filled with pirates. Dude, that's insane. Hereupon the Spaniards, not able to bear their robberies any longer, equipped 2 large men of war, both for the defense of their own coasts and to cruise upon the enemies. So the Spanish are starting to get pissed off at this point. Right, I see that Dustin says, now that's a good way to maintain order, by putting a hole in the bottom of your own ship. Nobody can stay behind, right? I mean, if you want to guarantee everybody's coming, I think that's about the best way you could do that. Yeah, that's the best way you can do that. Nobody can stay back in the water unless they just want to kind of hang out and swim. All right, I'm going to hit my bowl, and then we're going to get into our author's explanation of how the pirates arm their vessels and regulate their voyages. So we're going to learn about the rules of the Brethren of the Coast and how they arm themselves and get ready to go robbing and stealing. It's pretty cool, man. You think about, just a recap of the stuff we've talked about so far. This guy left France in May 1666, sailed across the Atlantic Ocean into the Caribbean, filled with all kinds of fucking piracy and other countries that want to fuck them up. He finally gets to where he's going. His job with the French East India Company goes shit up. He gets fucking sold to a slave master, almost dies, gets sold to a surgeon. The surgeon takes care of him, teaches him a trade, lets him go as long as he promises to come back and pay what he paid for him. And he went right down to the port. He said to himself, you know what? I literally have fucking nothing, man. I have nothing but like the rags on my bones. I literally have nothing. I don't even have shoes. I have no job. I know how to do a job, but I don't have the prospect to work for anybody. I'm going to go down to the port and I'm going to see if I can join league with the pirates. And they took him in and they made him an actual member of the Brethren of the Coast. Absolutely amazing. Taught him the rules and brought him in. All right, chapter 5, how the pirates arm their vessels and regulate their voyages. Before the pirates go to sea, they give notice to all concerned of the day on which they are to embark, obliging each man to bring so many pounds of powder and ball as they think necessary. Being all come aboard, they consider where to get provisions, especially meat, seeing they scarce eat anything else, and of this the most common sort is pork. The next food is tortoises, which they salt a little. Sometimes they rob such or such and such a hog yard, where the Spaniards often have 1,000 head of swine together. They come to these places in the night, and having beset the keeper's lodge, they force him to arise and give them as many heads of pork as they desire, threatening to kill him if he refuses or makes any noise. And these menaces are oftentimes executed on the miserable swine keepers or any other person that endeavors to hinder their robberies. Having got meat sufficient for their voyage, they return to their ship, and here they allow twice a day everyone to eat as much as he wants, without weight or measure, nor does the steward of the vessel give any more meat or anything else to the captain than to the meanest mariner. So everybody gets a fair shake. It doesn't matter if you're the captain or the lowliest guy on the ship. Everybody gets to eat as much as they want twice a day. Once the ship is well victualed, they deliberate whither they shall go to seek their desperate fortunes. And likewise, they agree upon certain articles which are put in writing, which everyone is bound to observe. And all of them, or the chiefest part, do set their hands to it. Here they set down distinctly what sums of money each particular person ought to have for that voyage, the fund of all the payments being what is gotten by the whole expedition. For otherwise it is the same law among these people as with other pirates: no prey, no pay. First, therefore, they mention how much the captain is to have for his ship. Next, the salary of the carpenter or shipwright who have careened, mended, and rigged the vessel. This commonly amounts to 100 or 150 pieces of eight, according to the agreement. Afterwards, for provisions and victualling, they draw out the same stock about 200 salary for the surgeon and his chest of medicines, which usually is rated at 200 or 250 pieces of eight. Lastly, they agree what rate each one ought to have that is either wounded or maimed in his body, suffering the loss of any limb, etc. As for the loss of a right arm, you would receive 600 pieces of eight, or 6 slaves. Wow. So check the all right. So I've read this before, but for anybody that hasn't, I just want to reiterate. They're figuring out what everybody should get paid is like a base pay, right? Out of a common stock first. They say, okay, say we grab $100,000. Well, the first thing before we split it is we're going to give the captain this much for the use of the ship. We're going to give the surgeon this much for bringing his chest of medicines and all the shit, all of his costs, right? So they're just saying we're going to cover common costs out of the common treasury, right? Then they're figuring out what you should be paid, or what any individual man should be paid if they're wounded or fucked up in any way, right? And they figure out exactly in the beginning, before they even leave, they come to a common agreement of what those payments are going to be and how much you'll receive for losing certain things. So let's check this out again, right? So it says, lastly, they agree what rate each one ought to have that is either wounded or maimed in his body during a robbery. If you suffer the loss of a right arm, you get paid 600 pieces of 8 or 6 slaves. For the left arm, 500 pieces of 8 or 5 slaves. For a right leg, 500 pieces of 8 or 5 slaves. For the left leg, 400 pieces of 8 or 4 slaves. For an eye, 100 pieces of 8 or 1 slave. For a finger, the same as for an eye. All which sums are taken out of the common stock of what is gotten by their piracy. So that's fucking awesome. I mean, think about that though, right? So they're saying before we even start paying everybody's share, we're going to pay everybody that got maimed. And I think that man, everybody's in together, right? Everybody robs together. Anybody gets hurt, everybody's basically taking care of each other. You know, everybody's making like their pennies in there too, right? Before anybody gets to take a share out of the common stock, out of that common steel, the common steel, they're paying everybody that got fucked up and maimed. That's wild, man. Yeah, that's wild. They have also regard to qualities and places. Thus, the captain or chief is allotted 5 or 6 portions to what the ordinary seamen have. The masters may only 2, and other officers proportionately to their employ. After which they draw equal parts from the highest to the lowest mariner, the boys not being omitted, who draw half a share. So they're talking about the kids that are like 12, 13, 14 that are on these pirate ships. They had kids on these pirate boats that were as young as 8 years old sometimes. And that's insane to think about, man. These kids that like were basically feral children, had no parents, had nowhere to go, taken in by the Brethren of the Coast. Maybe he's the son of one of the other buccaneers, but just these young kids. So they're saying that even the boys get a share of the treasure. And check out what he says. He goes, they get a half a share because whenever the pirates take a better ship than the one that they have, it's the job of the young boys. It says it's the duty of the young boys to go on to the other ship higher and then make it back to the ship that they're stealing that's better than the one they're setting on fire. That's fucking insane. So you're just like sailing along, you find a boat that's bigger and nicer than yours, you kick everybody off of it, you take that one, right? You get everybody on the boat, you get all your shit on the boat, and then you send the 12 and 13-year-olds onto your old boat to set that motherfucker on fire and blow it up and make it back to your new boat in time to not get burned. That's fucking crazy, man. That's crazy. It says they observe among themselves very good order, for in the prizes which they take, it's severely prohibited to everyone to take anything to themselves. Hence, all they take is equally divided, as has been said before. They take a solemn oath to each other, not to conceal the least thing that they find among the prizes. Yeah, so if you're on a boat or if you're on a robbery, you can't just see something and fucking put it in your pocket because you think it's nice, right? If you're like walking through the treasure room and everybody's putting everything in chests and stuff like that, You can't be like, oh, I like that ruby, and stick it in your pocket and keep it for yourself, or they will fucking throw you off the boat. You have to put it in the pile. Everybody gets to share. It says, if anyone is found false to the oath, right? So if anybody steals and takes anything like that, they're immediately turned out of the society. They are very civil and charitable to one another, so that if anyone wants anything that the other one has, with great willingness, they will share it with one another. As soon as these pirates have taken a prize, they immediately set ashore the prisoners, detaining only a few or anybody who wants to join the brethren. So if they don't fight back, right, they're doing a robbery. If people don't fight back, they don't kill them. They just put them on shore. Anybody that wants to join the brethren can. And if they need anybody in their crew, they will take those people. So like if their surgeon got killed and they find a surgeon on a boat they're robbing, that surgeon has to come and live with the pirates until they let them go. That's just the way it's going for you today. Yeah, it says, if that happens, though, they have a rule for that too. Yeah, so if you're a surgeon, right, or whatever, you're a gunner on a boat that gets robbed by the pirates, and the pirates are like, hey, we need a gunner. It's not up to you whether or not you want to join the pirates. You're fucking coming with us. They even have a rule for how long they can keep those people. It says that for their own help and service, they will release those people after years tops. They refresh themselves at one island or another along the way, but especially at those on the south of Cuba. Here is where the pirates and buccaneers careen their vessels, while some hunt and others cruise in canoes for prizes. The inhabitants of New Spain and Campeche laid their best merchandise in ships of great bulk. The vessels from Campeche sail in the winter to Caracas, Trinity Isles, and that of Margarita, and return back again in the summer. The pirates, knowing these seasons, being very diligent in their own inquiries, basically they're spying on the Spanish, obviously, to find out when's the best time to rob them. Makes sense. The pirates always cruise between the places above mentioned, which is the Campeche, Caracas, Trinity Isles, and Margarita. But in case they light on no considerable treasure, they commonly undertake some more hazardous enterprises, one remarkable instance of which I shall give you now. That's right, Dustin. Immediately excommunicado, man. You are gone. You steal, you don't throw that, you're fucking done. You're out of the Brethren of the Coast. These guys were super fair, man. The pirates are, I mean, they're basically known for being the first true democracy in this part of the world. And at that time, probably one of the only real true democracies where everyone shared with each other. Every single person had a vote. Even if you were the lowliest man on the crew, you had a vote. And it counted. And you were taken care of. They had insurance for that, right? They had rules for that. Everybody followed the rules. If you didn't follow the rules, you were fucking out. All right, so a certain pirate called Pierre Francois, or Peter Francis, waiting a long time at sea with his boat and 26 men for the ships that were to return from Maracaibo to Campeche, and not being able to find any prey, at last he resolved to direct his course to Rancheras near the River de la Plata. Here lies a rich bank of pearl, to the fishery whereof they yearly sent from Cartagena 12 vessels with a man of war for their defense. Every vessel has at least 2 slaves in it, which are very dexterous in diving to the depth of 6 fathoms, where they find good store of pearls. On this fleet, called the Pearl Fleet, Pierre Francois resolved to venture, rather than go home empty. They then rid at anchor at the mouth of the river, the man of war scarce half a league distant from the small ships, and the wind very calm. Having spied them in this posture, he presently pulled down his sails and rowed along the coast, feigning to be a Spanish vessel coming from Maracaibo. But no sooner was he come up to the Pearl Bank, when suddenly he assaulted the vice admiral of 8 guns and 60 men, commanding them to surrender. The Spaniards made a good defense for some time, but at last they were forced to submit. Having thus taken the vice admiral, he resolved to attempt the man of war, which with which addition he hoped to master the rest of the fleet. To this end, he presently sunk his own boat, putting forth the Spanish colors, and weighed anchor with a little wind, which then began to stir. Having with threats and promises compelled most of the Spaniards to assist him, but so soon as the man-of-war perceived one of his fleet to sail, he did so too, fearing lest the mariners designed to run away with the riches that they had on board. The pirate on this immediately gave over the enterprise, thinking themselves unable to encounter force to force. Hereupon they endeavored to get out of the river and gain the open sea by making as much sail as they could, which the man-of-war perceiving, he presently gave them chase, but the pirates having laid on too much sail and a gust of wind suddenly rising, their mainmast was brought by the board, which disabled them from escaping. So basically, these fucking guys got into small boats, thought that they were going to ride up on this pearl fleet that had a man-of-war with them. They rode up in their little boat. They pulled the same shit that Pierre le Grand did, right? They drilled a hole in their own boat to sink it. They take the first boat, hoping that it's big enough that they can take on the man-of-war. But as they got closer, they realized that shit is not happening, dude. These guys we are gonna die. Those dudes are gonna fuck us up, right? They turn around and start heading for the ocean. They try and get out of the river and start heading for the ocean. The man-of-war sees what the fuck is going on and starts chasing them. The pirates opened up all of their sail at the same time, right as they were getting into the sea from the mouth of the river, because there was a big gust of wind that they wanted to take advantage of to speed them up, right? So they opened up all of their sail, but when that happened, it broke their fucking mainmast down. When it says it came up by the board, it means it literally snapped off the deck of the ship. So that big gust of wind hit all those sails at the same time and took their mainmast with all their main sail power straight off the deck of their fucking boat and disabled them from escaping. This unhappy event much encouraged those in the man-of-war, they gaining upon the pirates every moment, and at last overtook them. But finding they had 22 sound men, the rest being either killed or wounded, they resolved to defend themselves as long as possible. This they performed very courageously for some time, till they were forced by the man-of-war, on condition that they should not be used as slaves to carry stones or be employed in other labors for 3 or 4 years, as they served their other slaves, but that they should be set safe ashore on free land. On these articles they yielded with all they had taken, which was worth in pearls alone above 100,000 pieces of 8. Damn. Besides the vessel, the provisions and goods, etc., that were on the boat, all of which would have made a great prize. Yeah, obviously. But they couldn't, man. So the Spanish caught them. They fought them hard, and finally they made a deal with the Spanish and said, listen, if you won't fucking enslave us and make us carry large stones or do any other kind of labor, and you'll just set us safe on the beach, we'll just give you we'll give up. You can have the boat, you can have all the shit on it. They took up the pearl on board was worth 100,000 pieces of 8. They were like, look, you can have all your shit back. We'll stop fucking killing all your dudes. We'll stop this fight, but you got to put us on shore. Another bold attempt like this, no less remarkable, I shall also give you. A certain Portugal, thence called Bartholomew Portuguese, was cruising in a boat of 30 men and 4 small guns from Jamaica upon the Cape de Corriente in Cuba, where he met a great ship from Maracaibo and Cartagena, bound for the Havana. They were well provided with 20 great guns and 70 men, passengers and mariners. The ship he presently assaulted, which they had on board, as resolutely defended. The pirate escaping the first encounter, resolved to attack her more vigorously than before, seeing he had suffered no great damage. This he performed with so much resolution that at last, after a long and dangerous fight, he became master of it. The Portuguese lost only 10 men and had 4 wounded, so that he had still remaining 20 fighting men, whereas the Spaniards had double the number. Having possessed themselves of the ship, the wind being contrary to return to Jamaica, they resolved to steer to Cape St. Anthony, which lies west of Cuba. They went there to repair and take in fresh water, of which they were in great want. Being very, very near the Cape, they unexpectedly met with 3 great ships coming from New Spain and bound for the Havana. By these not being able to escape, they were easily retaken, both ships and pirates. Dude, think about that. This is one of my favorite pirate stories. I'm going to make sure I break all this shit down. Okay, so this dude is out pirating. He sees a big-ass Spanish ship, right? It's got a bunch of commodities on it. He wants that. He can go sell that shit at port. He fights his ass off, him and his guys. He loses some of his guys, right? But he didn't take any great damage to his ship, so he's like, fuck that. I'm going back after these dudes. We're going to take them. He goes at the big ship again. He finally wins and takes the ship. He goes sailing off, right? He says, let's go fucking clean this boat out. Let's go get everything gathered up, get ready to go sell this stuff. When he gets to where he's going, he gets to this cape where he wants to careen the boat, which means clean the bottom. And he wants to take stock of everything. When he gets to this cape, there's 3 huge ships, all with Spain. Obviously, they're in Cuba, right? So he sees these 3 huge ships filled with men and cannon, and he's just like, fuck, dude. Great. Imagine that you just robbed a bank, you got away with it, and then by happenstance, you literally drove into the one place where there was a swarm of cops, right? That's what this guy just did. And so, yeah, they get arrested. Yeah, they get arrested. All right, let me continue on here. Hang on one second. Okay. Yeah, so they were easily retaken by the Spanish, both the ships that they had stolen and the pirates thrown in the handcuffs. They were all made prisoners and stripped of all the riches that they had taken as well. The cargo that they lost to the Spanish consisted of 120,000 weight of coconuts, the chief ingredient of chocolate, it says, and 70,000 pieces of 8. 2 days after this misfortune, there arose a great storm. Okay, so they get arrested. They're on the Spanish boats, being held prisoner. 2 days later, there arose a great storm, which separated the 3 ships from one another. The big vessel where the pirates were arrived at Campeche, where many considerable merchants came and saluted the captain. These presently knew the Portuguese pirate because he was infamous for many robberies and murders that he had committed on their coasts, which they kept fresh in their memory. The next day after their arrival, the magistrates of the city sent to demand the prisoners from on board the ship in order to punish them according to their desert. So think about that now. You're wanted by the Spanish. They catch you. There's 3 of these huge ships. There's a big gnarly storm that hits the bay where you're at. It separates all the boats. The one you're on takes you back to some place where you just were pirating, dude, murdering all kinds of people and stealing everything from everybody. And those people are like, yo, you've got them on your boat? For real? No, fuck them. You got to let us kill them. Think about that shit. So you're not just prisoners on the boat by the Spanish. These people that are in Campeche are like, oh, no. Them dudes just came through here robbing and killing, bro. You got to give us them. You got to give us them. So the next day after their arrival, the magistrates of the city sent to demand the prisoners from on board the ship in order to punish them for all the shit that they did. But fearing the captain of the pirates, should make his escape, as he had formerly done, being their prisoner once before. So they had him before, and he broke the fuck out. Good for him. And now they're worried that he's going to be able to get away again. So they figured, since he had broke out from them before, they figured it was safer just to leave him guarded on the ship for right now, right? So they sent word to the ship and said, hey, we're claiming those prisoners so that we can hold them, you know, we can have court and shit like that soon. But we want you to hold them for us on the boat for the time being so that they can't run away, right? So the people on the boat, they say, okay, cool, he can stay here for a while. So they start erecting a gibbet to hang him from the next day without any other process than to lead him from the ship to his punishment. That shit's crazy. The rumor of which was presently brought to Bartholomew Portuguese, right? So the main pirate, Bartholomew Portuguese, is on the ship, and he hears this. He says, oh, fuck, man. These dudes just claimed us as their prisoners and said we don't even get a trial. They're just fucking going to take us straight from this boat onto the beach, and they're going to fucking hang us. So he sought all possible means to escape that night and tried to figure out what he was going to do. And this is what he did. He took 2 earthen jars wherein the Spaniards often carry wine from Spain to the West Indies and stopped them up very well, melting the ends closed with wax, intending to use them for swimming, as those unskilled in that art do with corks or empty bladders. Having made this necessary preparation, he waited when all would be asleep. But not being able to escape his sentinel's vigilance, he stabbed him with a knife he had secretly purchased. And then he threw himself into the sea with the earthen jars before mentioned, by the help of which he stayed afloat. Once he reached the shore, he immediately took off into the woods, where he hid himself for 3 days, not daring to appear, eating no other food than wild herbs. Those of the city next day made diligent search for him in the woods, where they concluded him to be. This strict inquiry Portuguese saw from the hollow of a tree. So he was fucking hiding out in the hollow of a tree in the woods, dude. Think about that shit, man. He's on a boat. He's on a Spanish fucking ship, chilling out in this bay, waiting to be executed. He's like, fuck that, dude. I'm going to have to MacGyver some shit around here. He gets some earthen jars, dude, and stops them up so that they'll be like flotation devices. He ropes them things around him, stabs the guy watching him so he can get away from off the boat, jumps into the fucking ocean with these earthen jars, these floats, these homemade floats, right? Makes it to the shore, gets into the woods, hides there for 3 days, and finds some like hollowed out tree that he can sit in and he can peek out through. It says he's eating nothing but wild herbs and shit like that. It's fucking crazy, man. Absolutely insane. This, I told you, this is one of my favorite pirate stories, like OG pirate stories. This shit is awesome, and it only gets better. So it says, our guy Bartholomew Portuguese, he's in the hollow of a tree, wherein he lay hid. And upon the return of the people that were looking for him, they couldn't find him, right? So they did not find him. Okay. He endured extreme hunger, as it took him a week to cross the island quietly and like out of the way of everybody, right? Without being seen. It took him a week to cross this fucking island incognito. It says he endured extreme hunger and thirst, having no other provision with him other than a small I guess like a canteen with a little bit of water. Besides the fears of falling again into the hands of the Spaniards. So he was like fucking having anxiety attacks and shit. It sounds like he ate nothing but a few shellfish, which he found among the rocks near the seashore, and being obliged to pass over and near some rivers, not knowing very well how to swim, he found at last an old board which the waves had driven ashore, wherein were a great few nails. These he took, and with no small labor he sharpened them on a stone till he had made them like knives, though not so well. With these and nothing else, he cut down some branches of trees with which twigs and, I don't know what this word is, osiers, osiers, I don't know. He cut down branches. So he fucking found a board with some nails in it, like sharpened them as much as he could, and he used that to cut down small branches and twigs that he joined together and made as well as he could into like a little raft to waft him over the rivers in some cases. This shit's gnarly, dude. Once he finally made it down the river, he arrived at the Cape of Golfo Triste, where he found a ship full of pirates, comrades of his own that had just come from Jamaica. That, dude, that's like the best luck in the world, right? That's the best luck in the world. I mean, you got to imagine there were pirate ships all over this. And like we said, just from Tortuga, at any given time in the beginning, there were 20 pirate ships just chilling, right? So these fuckers were all over the place. And he finally makes it down this river to get to the coast into the Gulf, Golfo Triste, it says. And there's a ship full of pirates with people he knows, some of his homeboys from Jamaica, that they had just shown up there. So he sees his friends, and he related all of his adversities and misfortunes, and withal desired that they would fit him out with a boat and 20 men. And they were like, what the fuck are you up to, right? He tells them, he's like, dude, didn't you hear what the fuck I just said? I came through here robbing and stealing and killing. I took off. I found a big Spanish ship. I robbed that motherfucker. We were chilling. It was time for me to clean the bottom of this boat off, make sure it was in good shape so we could get back to wherever the fuck and sell all of our stuff. And we got arrested. We got thrown in fucking shackles, brought the fuck back here. Right? Got fucking brought back to where we had first started killing and robbing out of just weird circumstance. He goes, these motherfuckers were going to hang me. I had to make floaties out of fucking jars and just like stab some dude so I could get off the boat. I've been hiding in the woods for over a week and a half, probably 2 weeks, right? So it was 3 days he hid in that fucking tree trunk and just ate wild herbs. And it took him a week and a half to cross the island and fucking build this raft and get down the river into the Gulf. He's like, yeah, bro, I need a ship and I need 20 guys. And they're like, what the fuck do you need that for, right? He says, bro, I'm going back there. They've got a bunch of my fucking boys and they've got all my shit that I stole fair and square. He tells them, he goes, I want my fucking shit back. They're like, you're crazy motherfucker, dude. You're fucking crazy. He goes, no, I'm going back to Campeche and I'm going to assault the ship that was in the river first. And he's like, all right, bro. All right. So they were like, here you go, man. They gave him a boat and they gave him his men. They gave him 20 guys that agreed to go with him. It says they presently granted his request and equipped him with a boat accordingly and gave him as many men as wanted to go with him. With his small company, he set out to execute his design, which he bravely performed 8 days after he left Golfo Triste. Okay, so he got the boat and the guys. So this is another 8 days. He finally makes it back to Campeche with his guys and his boat. Okay. With undaunted courage and without any noise, he assaulted the ship that he was originally handcuffed on with his homeboys. Those on board thought it was a boat from land that came to bring contraband goods, and so they were in no posture of defense, which opportunity the pirates, laying hold of, assaulted them so resolutely that in a little bit of time they compelled the Spaniards to surrender. Now being masters of the ship, they immediately weighed anchor and set sail from the port, lest they should be pursued by other vessels. This they did with the utmost joy, seeing themselves possessors of so brave a ship. Especially Portuguese, who by a second turn of fortune was become rich and powerful again, who was so lately in that same vessel a prisoner, condemned to be hanged. With this purchase he designed greater things, which he might have done, since there remained in the vessel so great a quantity of rich merchandise, though the plate had, so the gold and silver had been sent into the city, but everything else was still there. But while he was making his voyage to Jamaica near the Isle of Pinos on the south of Cuba, a terrible storm arose which drove against the rocks, drove his ship against the rocks where it was lost. But Portuguese with his companions escaped in a canoe, in which he arrived at Jamaica, where it was not long after he went on new adventures, but was never as fortunate as he was that time after. Dude, he still ended up fucking losing everything. And he ended up going back to Jamaica in a fucking canoe. That shit is amazing. This shit is absolutely, I love that story, man. You got it, then you don't got it. You got it, then you don't got it. And I'm going to talk about insane. That dude was like, yo, I'm so glad to see you guys, right? Most people would be like, you got to get me the fuck out of here, right? Most people would be like, hey, man, these motherfuckers are looking to hang me. I just escaped across the island. We got to get the fuck out of here. Like, now, you got to get me the fuck out of here, right? Most people would run. This dude said, yo, I need a boat and I need like 20 guys so I can go back and kill everybody on that boat that was going to fucking hang me. And I want all my fucking shit back. I got boys over there I need to get freed. They're going to hang my dudes and they got all my shit. So we're going to go kill these guys, take my shit back, and we're going to free our fucking friends, man. That shit is gnarly. And then he does it. And he gets away. And while he's sailing back with all his shit, other than the gold and silver, right? He got all his shit back, all his friends back. He got this badass Spanish ship now. And on his way back to Jamaica, a huge storm hits, bashes them against the rocks. He loses everything. And has to fucking build or buy or steal a canoe to go back to Jamaica in. That shit is rough. What's up, Montauk? What's up, B1? That shit is insane. I need to get another drink. I need some like weight, some like hold music or some shit like that. All right, let's do that. Rat Trap needs a drink. Let's grab a drink real quick. Maybe we'll grab a smoke, and then we'll come back to it. We've still got a few more stories in this chapter, so we've got a little bit to go before we end it for tonight. We've still got some cool pirate tales to tell, all firsthand accounts of people that were with this guy. I mean, think about that. Well, again, I remind you, this is all firsthand accounts of the surgeon that was there with these people, right? Or was close by or had a homie on the boat. That shit's amazing. Shit's amazing. Yep, all these stories are true. They're authentic and true stories, man. It is really fucking cool. Yeah, this book is the only long form, historically accurate, like historian approved. It's the only authentic, handwritten, firsthand account of piracy and buccaneering by a fucking buccaneer. Yeah, it's pretty cool. This dude knew all these people, robbed and stole with them. Absolutely incredible. I gotta get a drink. What's up, Civil? Yeah, that is a hell of a story, and that's one of my favorite ones, if not my favorite. It's one of my favorite ones. For just like a quick one pirate shot, you know, and especially one most people haven't heard of. I mean, there's some grander tales and some insane raids and thefts and treasures and stuff, but got it, don't got it. Got it, don't got it. And the hiding and the building the floats and shit like that, jumping into the ocean. It's all nuts, man. Yeah, that's a wild story, man. I say since 16/7s started, I haven't gotten to catch a good show till tonight, and thankfully I caught a good one. I don't know what the 16/7s is, but I'm glad I'm glad to see you. I'm glad you're here. Hope you're having a good night. Hope everybody's having a good night. All right, got a drink finally. Got it. Oh, get caught mouth like a bitch. All right, let's grab a smoke real quick and then we'll get back to it. I said we've got at least a couple more tales in this chapter. And I'll be doing one of these like 16 hours, 7 days of work. Oh, wow, Sybil. Yeah, I got you. Holy shit. 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. What are you building, fucking iPhones or what? I'd be over there in one of those factory cities building fucking phones, huh? That's wild. I hope you're getting a break now. I mean, holy shit. Oh, I don't know which one of these is which. I can't see it. What is this? No, not that one. What about that one? Yeah, that'll work. Why not? Let's do that one. Let's switch the image up a little bit. Working a shutdown, which means for 40 days straight, I get the joy of 16/7s. Oh, wow. That's wild. That's a good way to get burnt out. Hopefully you get some time off after that, huh? That's a lot. You get burnt the fuck out quick. Yeah, some of this stuff is, like I said, over time, I'm going to do these like, I want to do Alexander also. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do like a pirate one every week or every other week. I'm going to work it out because I want to do some Alexander stuff too. But I'm going to do a lot of episodes. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through all 4 books that I mentioned in the beginning. And that's John Esquemeling. That's the one we're doing now. And then there's the other one that's real short. I mentioned it's like a year of a guy's life. His name's Lionel Wafer. He ended up living in the Isthmus of Panama with the Indians there for a whole year, and that taught Europe like an insane amount of information. He came back and taught everybody everything about the Indians there. He even had like tattoos and stuff like that. They didn't want to let him go, but we're going to tell that story when we get to it. Yeah, we'll tell that story when we get to it. One of them, his name is Daniel Defoe, and he was a map maker who came into contact and worked with people like John Esquemeling, right? Lionel Wafer. these people would come to him with information and like the maps that they drew, right? The pirates, like, that went to all these places nobody else went to. Remember, Spain was in control of a lot of stuff. People weren't even allowed to go there. So a lot of this information would be brought back by buccaneers and pirates and stuff. Daniel Defoe would get firsthand accounts of these raids and these tales, and he ended up compiling a book with the help of John Esquemeling, of course, and others, um, that filled in even more stories on pirates and their exploits that are even found in this book. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. So, I mean, we're going to be going through all of them. It's going to take a while. There's going to be plenty of episodes of this stuff for anybody that's into the pirate thing. Yeah, Dustin, it's burnout for sure. You get burnt out quick. That's what I was saying. Yeah, you go nuts, man. So all the best to you, Sybil. I hope you at least get some time off after that, like a good long rest. Yeah, we'll get back to this in just a minute. I'm just gonna grabbing a smoke real quick, and then we'll get back to it. Oh, I didn't mention the other one. The other guy, I mentioned there's 4 books. I mentioned the other one. So this one that we're reading from tonight, there's Lionel Wafer, um, Daniel Defoe, his collections. He wrote a couple of books, but we'll focus on one. And then William Dampier is the other one, and he's known as like the pirate scientist or the scientist pirate. He contributed a lot of information to science. He tracked all kinds of stuff: the animals, the plants, the seas, the tides. He would draw incredible maps and scenery. Had just a memory like a trap, and described a lot of animals for the very first time in his travel. He was the first person to circumnavigate the globe 3 times in his travels. And he just kind of coincidentally became a pirate because he was traveling around doing his thing, and he got along with all those guys. So he would sail with them and he'd go robbing and stealing and all that kind of shit. What's up, KD? Good to see you, man. All right, let's go back down here, grab my drink, and get back to it. Damn, yeah, the most I ever worked was 45 days in a row. I thought that was hell. Yeah, she's talking about working 16 hours a day. I'm making double time with 8 hours of overtime and paid per diem every day. I have a company truck with a gas card. Well, that's all well and good. I get that. I totally understand where you're coming from. You're making good money. I get that. But even still, you're going to get burnt out fast, like as far as your health and your mental. That's what we were talking about. Yeah, that should burn you out quick, man. Dustin says, speaking of working, I'm about to get some shut eye real soon. I'll replay whatever I missed tomorrow. Right on, man. You have a good night. Have a good day tomorrow, bro. We'll see you again soon. We'll see you again soon. It's late on a Tuesday night, but I've been meaning to get to some of these, man. I've been talking about doing these shows forever, and I just never make time for it. So I figured, fuck it, I just got to do it, you know. All right, let me pull this stuff back up and hit my bowl. All right. Yeah, I'm sure it is rough. I'm sure it is rough, Sybil. Like I said, hope you get plenty of time off when it's done. All right, let's get back to it. All right, we just left the story of Bartholomew Portuguese. And he's okay, right? So he sailed in his canoe back to Jamaica with nothing at all. Never had a fortune after that. He just kind of like dwindled into the background as far as pirate history goes. But then our author says, no less considerable are the actions of another pirate who now lives at Jamaica, who on several occasions has performed very surprising things. He was born in the United Provinces. His own name not being known, his companions gave him that of Roca Brasiliano by reason of his long residence in Brazil. Hence, he was forced to fly when the Portuguese retook those countries from the Dutch. Several nations then inhabiting at Brazil, as English, French, Dutch, and others, being constrained to seek new fortunes. Oh, Sybil, they would travel insane distances in canoes. Insane distances in canoes between those islands sometimes. Yep. So this person fled to Jamaica, right? When the fucking Spanish came in and kicked everybody out of Brazil, everybody had to kind of figure out what they were going to do. This guy, Rock Brasiliano, fled to Jamaica, where being at a stand how to get his living. So he's trying to figure out what he's going to do with himself. And he figures, I'm just going to enter into the society of the pirates, right? He enters himself into the Society of Pirates in Jamaica, where he served as a private mariner for some time and behaved himself so well that he was beloved and respected by all. One day, some of the mariners quarreled with their captain to that degree that they left the boat. Brasiliano, following them, was chosen as their leader, who, having fitted out a small vessel, they made him captain. Within a few days after, he took a great ship coming from New Spain, which had a great quantity of plate on board. So he fucking grabbed it within a few days of becoming captain of this new small vessel. He grabs a ship coming from New Spain with a bunch of gold and silver on it. And he carried it back to Jamaica. This action got him a great reputation at home, and though in his private affairs he governed himself very well, he would oftentimes appear brutish and foolish when in drink, running up and down the streets, beating and wounding those that he met, no person daring to make any resistance. So this guy would get drunk and fuck shit up. Right? They're like, the dude, he was a good captain. Everybody loved him. He was a good dude. But when he got drunk, he was a fucking psychopath. They would just like beat the shit out of people and dare a motherfucker to touch him. To the Spaniards, he was always very barbarous and cruel, out of an inveterate hatred against that nation. Of these, he commanded several to be roasted alive on wooden spits for not showing him hog yards where he might steal swine. That shit's fucking crazy, dude. He hated the Spanish so much that he would roast them alive on wooden spits for not telling him where he could go and steal pigs at to get meat for his ship. After many of these cruelties, as he was cruising on the coasts of Campeche, a dismal tempest surprised him so violently that his ship was wrecked upon the coast. The mariners only escaping with their muskets and some few bullets and powder, which were the only things they could save. The ship was lost between Campeche and the Gulf of Triste. Here they got ashore in a canoe, and marching along the coast with all the speed they could, they directed their course towards Gulf of Triste, the common refuge of the pirates. Being upon his journey, and all very hungry and thirsty as is usual in deserted places, they were pursued by a troop of 100 Spaniards. Brasiliano, perceiving their imminent danger, encouraged his companions, telling him they were better soldiers and ought rather to die under their arms fighting as it became men of courage than to surrender ever to the Spaniards, who would only take away their lives with the utmost torments. There were only 30 pirates, Yet seeing their brave commander oppose the enemy with such courage, resolved to do the like. Hereupon they faced the troop of 100 Spaniards and discharged their muskets on them so dexterously, dexterously that they killed one horseman almost with every shot. That's pretty fucking awesome. That's pretty awesome. So there's 30 pirates, 100 Spanish. They're running down the coast trying to get to Golfo Triste, where there's a bunch of other pirates. If they just make it there, they'll be all right. But the Spaniards were closing in, and Rock Brasiliano told his guys, fuck that, dude. It's better to die fighting like men than it is to get turned into these assholes and have them fucking torture us and shit before we die. So they loaded up their guns and they took them on, and with almost every single shot that they fired, they killed one of the horsemen. The fight continued for an hour till at last the Spaniards were put to flight. They stripped the dead and took from them what was most for their use. Such as were also not quite dead, they dispatched with the ends of their muskets. So they went through the Spanish dudes, right? They win. They find all the dead bodies. They take all their bullets and money or whatever the fuck. And then the people that they found that weren't dead quite, they went ahead and just shot them with their muskets and finished them off. Having vanquished the enemy, they mounted on horses that they found in the field and continued their journey. Brasiliano, having lost but 2 of his companions in this bloody fight and had 2 wounded. So they only lost 2 guys and had a couple of wounded. That's not bad. Prosecuting their way before they came to the port, they spied a boat at anchor from Campeche, well manned, protecting a few canoes that were lading wood. Hereupon they sent 6 of their men to watch them, who next morning, by a while, possessed themselves of the canoes. So they stole these fucking canoes. Having given notice to their companions, they boarded them and also took the little man-of-war. Being thus masters of this small fleet, they wanted only provisions, of which they found little aboard these vessels. But this defect was supplied by the horses, which they killed and salted with salt, which by good fortune the woodcutters had brought with them, with which they supported themselves so they could get better. Okay, so I guess they killed the horses that they stole, salted the meat, and ate that shit on their new boats that they stole. The pirate's life for me, huh? These guys are incredible, man. These guys are incredible. Take what you want and give nothing back. They also took another ship going from New Spain to Maracaibo, laden with diverse sorts of merchandise and pieces of 8, designed to buy coconuts for their lading home. All these they carried back to Jamaica, where they safely arrived, and according to custom, wasted all of their money in just a few days in taverns, giving themselves to all manner of debauchery. Fucking pirate's life for me, man. Such of these pirates will spend 2,000 or 3,000 pieces of 8 in a single night, not leaving themselves a good shirt to wear in the morning. My own master would buy sometimes a pipe of wine, and placing it in the street, would force those that passed by to drink with him, threatening also to pistol them if they would not. He would do the like with barrels of beer or ale, and very often he would throw these liquors about the streets and wet people's clothes without their regarding whether he spoiled their shit or not. That's fucking... Dude, what an insane place, these pirate cities, man. What insane places, these pirate cities. Could you imagine this? They just went out and stole, came back. They'd spend $2,000 or $3,000 a night just getting fucked up. They didn't even buy new clothes. Didn't even have anything to wear the next day. They would just buy mad liquor and beer and shit. It says my own master would buy some. There would be people. These guys would be out in the street making people drink that walk past them and threaten them to shoot them if they don't drink wine with them. Threatening to shoot them if they don't have a beer, and just like tossing liquor on the street and at people and on their clothes, wishing a motherfucker would. Could you imagine? What an insane place, man. It sounds fucking amazing. Among themselves, these pirates are very liberal. If anyone has lost all, which often happens in their manner of life, they freely give him of what they have. In taverns and alehouses they have great credit, but at Jamaica they ought not run very deep in debt, seeing the inhabitants there easily sell one another for that debt. This happened to my patron once, to be sold for a debt of a tavern wherein he had spent the greatest part of his money. This man had within 3 months before, he had 3,000 pieces of 8 in ready cash, all which he wasted in that little time and became as poor as I have ever seen. But to return to Rock Brasiliano, after having spent all of his money, he was forced to go to sea again to seek another fortune. He set forth towards the coast of Campeche again, his common rendezvous. 15 days after his arrival, he put himself into a canoe to espy the port of that city and see if he could rob any Spanish vessel. But his fortune was so bad that both he and all his men were taken and carried before the governor, who immediately cast them into the dungeon, intending to hang every single one of them. And doubtless he had done so but for a strategy that Brasiliano came up with that saved their lives. He wrote a letter to the governor in the names of other pirates that were abroad at sea, telling them that he should have care how he used those persons he had in custody, for if he hurt them in the least, they swore they would never give quarter to any Spaniard that should fall into their hands. These pirates, having often been at Campeche and other places of the West Indies in the Spanish dominions, the governor therefore feared what mischief their companions abroad might do to his countrymen if he should punish the people he had in his dungeon. Hereupon he released Brasiliano and his men, exacting only an oath from them that they would leave their exercise of piracy forever, and withal he sent them as common mariners in the galleons to Spain. They got in this voyage altogether 500 pieces of 8, so that they tarried not long there after their arrival. Providing themselves with necessities, they returned right back to Jamaica. That shit is crazy, dude. So they get arrested. They're thrown in the dungeon. They write some fugazi letter to the governor that's supposed to be from other pirates that are still out at sea, that says, if you fuck with our fucking brethren of the coast, if you mess with our boys, we're going to kill every Spaniard we come across, right? The governor goes, bullshit. All right, I'm just going to let these guys go, but I'm going to ship them back to Spain so that they can't just go right back and start pirating, right? So he ships these fuckers to Spain. They put their money together, get some necessities, and they sail right back to fucking Jamaica. They just hop on a boat and they go right back. That is fucking amazing. All right, hang on. All right, it says, so that they returned to Jamaica, from whence they set forth right back to the sea, committing even greater robberies and cruelties than before, but especially abusing the poor Spaniards who fell into their hands with all sorts of cruelty. The Spaniards, finding they could gain nothing on these people, nor diminish their number, daily resolved to lessen the number of their trading ships. So the Spanish are like, well, fuck, man, we can't beat these pirates. They're fucking us up. So we're just going to have to lessen the number of ships we send back and forth. But neither was this of any service, for the pirates, finding few ships at sea, began to gather into companies and to land on their dominions, ruining entire cities, towns, and villages, pillaging, burning, and carrying away as much as they could. So the pirates are like, well, cool, man, if you're not going to put the shit in boats and sail it across the ocean where we can steal it, we're just going to come to your little camp before, the place where and we'll come to your port. We're just going to come up on land and steal everything in your storehouses now and burn your shit to the ground. The first pirate who began these invasions by land was a man by the name of Lewis Scott, who sacked the city of Campeche for the first time, which he almost ruined, robbing and destroying all he could. And after he had put to it an excessive ransom, he left it. After Scott came another man named Mansvelt, who invaded Grenada and penetrated even into the South Sea, till at last, for want of provision, he was forced to go back. He assaulted the Isle of St. Catherine, which he took with a few prisoners. These directed him to Cartagena and a principal city in Grenada. but the bold attempts and actions of John Davis, born at Jamaica, ought not to be forgotten, being some of the most remarkable, especially his rare prudence and valor showed in the aforementioned kingdom of Grenada. This pirate, having long cruised in the Gulf of Pocotaro on the ships expected to Cartagena, bound for Nicaragua, and not meeting any of them, resolved at last to land in Nicaragua, leaving his ship hidden on the coast. This design he soon executed. He took 80 men out of the 90 that he had in all, and the rest he left to keep the ship. He divided them equally into 3 canoes. His intent was to rob the churches and rifle the houses of the chief citizens of Nicaragua. Thus, in the dark of night, they entered the river leading to that city, rowing in their canoes. By day, they hid themselves and their boats under the branches of trees on the banks, which grow very thick along the riversides in those countries and along the seacoast. Being arrived at the city the 3rd night, the sentinel who kept the post of the river thought them just to be fishermen that had been fishing in the lake, and most of the pirates, understanding Spanish, he doubted not as soon as he heard them speak. They had in their company an Indian who had run away from his master, who would have enslaved him unjustly. Okay, so they ran into an Indian who had run away from his master that had beat the shit out of him and enslaved him unjustly. He went ashore and instantly killed the sentinel. So the Indian went ashore and killed the sentinel. This done, they entered the city and went directly to 3 or 4 houses of the chief citizens where they knocked. The people inside, believing them to be friends, opened their doors freely, and the pirates, suddenly possessing themselves of the houses, stole all the money and plate they could find. Nor did they spare the churches and most sacred things, all of which were pillaged and profaned without any respect or veneration. Meanwhile, great cries and lamentations were heard from some of those who had escaped them, so that the whole city was in an uproar, and all the citizens rallied in order to a defense. The pirates, perceiving this, they instantly fled, carrying away their booty, and some prisoners, these they led away, that if any of them should be taken by the Spaniards, they might use them for ransom. Thus they got to their ship, and with all speed put out to sea, forcing the prisoners before they let them go, to procure them as much flesh as was necessary for their voyage to Jamaica. But no sooner had they weighed anchor when they saw a troop of about 500 Spaniards, all well armed, at the seaside. Against these they let fly several guns, wherewith they forced them to quit the sands and retire, with no small regret to see these pirates carry away so much plate of their churches and houses, though distant at least 40 leagues from the sea. These pirates got on this occasion above 4,000 pieces of 8 in money, besides much solid gold and silver and many jewels, in all to the value of 50,000 pieces of 8 or more. With all of this, they arrived at Jamaica soon after, but this sort of people, being never long masters of their own money, were soon constrained to seek more by the same means, and Captain John Davis, presently after his return, was chosen admiral of 7 or 8 vessels. He was now esteemed as an able conductor for such land enterprises. He began his new command by directing his fleet to the north of Cuba, there to wait for the fleet from New Spain. But missing his design, they determined for Florida. Being arrived there, they landed their men and sacked a small city named St. Augustine. The castle had a garrison of 200 men, but could not prevent the pillage of the city, they effecting it without the least damage from the soldiers or the townsmen. Pretty wild, man. So that guy was the first, Jonathan Davis was the first one to sack fucking St. Augustine in Florida. That's pretty wild, as a pirate. Yep, Captain John Davis. That's wild. Born in Jamaica. So he was born in pirate land. No wonder he was such a badass fucking pirate. Yeah, he was born in that shit. He wasn't new to it. He was true to it, as they say, right? That's his fucking life. That's crazy, man. I gotta pack this fucking ball back up. And we'll do one more. And then we'll call it a night. We'll do one more. Yeah, I bet Sybil says working all these hours, I have to stay stocked on the goodies or I would never make it. Yeah, you got to keep your mind right. You got to keep your mind right, especially doing that. No doubt about it. Those are some fucking crazy long hours, dude. Crazy long hours, man. Purple Punch. That reminds me of Biodome. You remember that part in Biodome where Pauly Shore's out there and he's like misting that plant, which is funny. He's out there misting the pot plant. He's like, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Purple Sticky Punch." Remember that? Too funny. He's growing weed in the Biodome. Might as well. Yeah, probably have killer soil. Got some scientists around there. If you were good to them, they could help you grow some dank. All right, we'll do one more. Hit my bowl a couple times and we'll get right into it. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the pirate history as much as I do. And like I said, the best part about this stuff that you're hearing right now is that it's an authentic firsthand account of these things, right? This is the only long form, truly authentic firsthand account of a pirate and a buccaneer. And the people that he surrounded himself with, the ships that he was on, the people he worked with, the raids he was on, the things that he witnessed. So that makes this shit just amazing. You know, it's one thing to be reading a book or like hear stories or watch a document. You know, it's all fucking doctored up in a documentary. This is the real words of a real buccaneer. The stuff that I'm reading you is the direct account from the guy that was there and knew these people. Man, those snow caps will fucking kick your ass. It's not even harsh, like make me cough. Just like harsh in the way, like I just need a drink. I always need a drink after I hit that shit. Like, damn. It's not even like harsh. It's just really strong. You know, it's potent. It's a potent smoke, a potent herb. All right, let's get into this one here. This is chapter 6 of the origin of Francis Lolonois and the beginning of his robberies. So there's a lot of information on this one. This is the beginning of his robberies, so we'll get through some of this. There's a lot of chapters in this book with a lot of the biggest pirates you've ever heard of, all the biggest raids, all the coolest shit that's ever happened in piracy is all in this book. We're going to get to all of it. And this pirate was a sick fuck. And this, like I said, it's this is the origin and the beginning of his robberies. So Francis Lolonois was a native of the territory in France, which is called Les Sables d'Olonne, or the Sands of Olonne. In his youth, he was transported to the Caribbean in quality of a servant or a slave, right? So he was brought to the Caribbean as a youth from France to be a slave. Being out of his time, when he got freed, he went to Hispaniola. He went to what we know as Haiti. He went to Hispaniola. That's where he joined for some time with the hunters. Remember, we talked about the buccaneers early on in this. We explained all of that already. Anybody that didn't hear that, go back and listen to the beginning of the show. It's incredible. The information is incredible. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm reading information, but the information is incredible. The story is incredible. So he joined with those hunters before he began his robberies, upon which I shall now relate, until his unfortunate death. At first he made 2 or 3 voyages as a common mariner, wherein he behaved himself so courageously as to gain the favor of the governor of Tortuga. That governor gave him a ship in which he might go and seek his fortune, which was very favorable to him at first, for in a short time he got great riches. But his cruelties against the Spaniards were so fucked up that the fame of them made him so well known throughout all of the Caribbean that the Spaniards in his time would choose rather to die or sink fighting than to ever surrender should they face him. Because they knew that they would have no mercy at his hands. So this dude treated, like when he got a hold of the Spanish, he tortured them and fucked them up so bad that it became like lore throughout the Caribbean how bad this guy was. So that anytime he faced the Spanish, they wouldn't even consider surrendering because they knew that he wouldn't show them any mercy. So they would literally fight until they would die rather than surrender. So it says, fortune, being seldom constant, after some time turned her back on him. For in a huge storm he lost his ship on the coast of Campeche. The men were all saved, but coming upon dry land, the Spaniards pursued them and killed the greatest part of his crew, also wounding Lolonois, whatever the fuck. I'm not French. Lolonois. Not knowing how to escape, he saved his life by a strategy, mingling sand with the blood of his wounds, with which besmearing onto his face and other parts of his body, and hiding himself dexterously among the dead, he continued there until the Spaniards quitted the field. So he pretended to be a dead body with all the other dead bodies until the Spaniards left. Once they were gone, he retired to the woods and bound up all of his wounds as well as he could. These being pretty well healed, he took his way to Campeche, having disguised himself in a Spanish clothing. Here he enticed a number of slaves to whom he promised liberty if they would obey him and trust to his conduct. They accepted his promises, and they all went and stole a canoe together, and they went out to sea. Now the Spaniards, having made several of his companions prisoners, kept them closed in a dungeon. While Lolonois went about the town and saw what passed, these were often asked, "What has become of your captain?" To whom they constantly answered, oh, hang on. Okay, there we go. Okay, so they accepted his promises. They stole a canoe. They went to sea. Now the Spaniards, having made several of Lolonois' companions prisoners in a dungeon, Lolonois went about the town to see who else was still around, right? So they got some of his guys in prison, but he's like, there's some people missing that aren't in jail. I got to figure out how to get them out of jail, and I got to figure out who the fuck is still on the street not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? So he goes about the town, and he starts asking people, what became of your captain? To whom they constantly answered, he is dead, which rejoiced the Spaniards, right? So they passed around this rumor that Lolonois is dead. The Spaniards got all excited, and they started making bonfires, right? Having big parties and shit, knowing nothing to the contrary. They gave thanks to God for their deliverance from such a cruel pirate. Lolonois, having seen these rejoicings for his death, made haste to escape with the slaves above mentioned and came safe to Tortuga, the common refuge of all sorts of wickedness, as it were, of pirates and thieves. Though now his fortune was low, yet he got another ship with craft and subtlety, and in 21 men. So he got another boat, and he put together 21 guys. Being well provided with arms and necessaries, he set forth for Cuba, on the south whereof is a small village called De los Cayos. The inhabitants drive a great trade in tobacco, sugar, and hides, and all in boats, not being able to use ships by reason of the little depth of that sea. Okay, so they do a lot of trade, and it's shallow water, so they can't bring in like really big boats. Lolonois was persuaded he should not get any considerable prey there, but by the good fortune of some fishermen who saw him and the mercy of God, they escaped him. For the inhabitants of the town dispatched immediately a vessel overland to the Havana, complaining that Lolonois was not dead and that he had come to destroy them with 2 canoes full of men. The governor could very hardly believe this, having received letters from Campeche that he was dead. But at their importunity, he sent a ship to their relief with 10 guns and 90 men well armed, giving them this express command, that they should not return into his presence without having totally destroyed those pirates. To this effect, he gave them a slave to serve for a hangman, and orders that they should immediately hang every single one of the pirates that they find, except Lolonois, their captain, whom they should bring alive to the Havana so he could hang him himself. That ship arrived at Cayos, of whose coming the pirates were advertised beforehand. So the pirates knew that they were coming. They knew that the cops were on their way. And instead of fucking ditching, right? So they knew the cops were coming, and instead of leaving, they went to seek it in the river Estera, where she rode at anchor. The pirates seized some of the fishermen and forced them by night to show them the entry of the port, hoping soon to obtain a greater vessel than their 2 canoes, and thereby to mend their fortune. They arrived after 2 a.m, very nigh on the ship, and the watch on board the ship asking them from where they came and if they had seen any pirates abroad. They caused one of the prisoners to answer that they had seen no pirates nor anything else, which answer made them believe that they were fled upon hearing of their coming. But they soon found the contrary, for about break of day the pirates assaulted the vessel on both sides with their 2 canoes, with such vigor that though the Spaniards behaved themselves as they ought to, and made as good defense as they could, making some use of their great guns, yet they were still forced to surrender, being beaten by the pirates with sword in hand down under the hatches. It's fucking wild, man. These guys always just like take these motherfuckers out. Like, even if there's not, like in this case, they've got 2 canoes full of guys. They come up on a bigger boat. That boat's got big ass cannon on it and shit. Like, they just climb all over the sides of this thing, man. Get all over that and just hack everybody the fuck up with their swords, man. This shit is wild. Now this story gets fucked. I told you this guy's a sick fuck, and here we go. All right, so they get onto the ship. They beat the shit out of everybody. They put everybody by sword point down underneath the hatches, right? Okay, from here, Lolonois commanded them to be brought up one by one, and in this order caused their heads to be struck off. Among the rest came up the slave, designed to be the pirate's executioner. This fellow implored mercy at his hands very dolefully, telling Lolonois he was constituted hangman of that ship, and if he would spare him, he would tell him faithfully all that he should desire. Lolonois, making him confess what he thought fit, commanded him to be murdered with the rest. Thus he cruelly and barbarously put them all to death, reserving only one alive, whom he sent back to the governor of the Havana with this message in writing: I shall never henceforward give quarter to any Spaniard whatsoever, and I have great hopes I shall execute on your own person the very same punishment I have done upon them that you sent against me. Thus I have retaliated the kindness you designed to me and my companions. That shit's wild, man. He fucking beheaded all of those people, including the hangman that they sent to kill him and his guys. Sent one dude back to the governor and said, from now on, every Spaniard I come across while I'm at sea, we're going to kill. We're not going to give quarter to us. Not one. No mercy. We're going to kill every fucking one of them. And I hope I get to see your ass soon so I can chop your fucking head off too. Wild, man. Fucking wild. All right, let's see. The governor, much troubled at this sad news, swore in the presence of many that he would never grant quarter to any pirate that should fall into his hands. But the citizens of the Havana desired him not to persist in that execution of that rash and rigorous oath, seeing that pirates would certainly take occasion from thence to do the same, and they had 100 times more opportunity of revenge than he did. That being necessitated to get their livelihood by fishery, they should hereafter always be in danger of their lives if he made that oath. By these reasons he was persuaded to bridle his anger and remit the severity of his oath. Now Lolonois had got a good ship, but very few provisions and people in it. To purchase both of which, he resolved to cruise from one port to another, doing thus for some time without success. He determined to go to the port of Maracaibo then. Here he surprised a ship laden with gold and silver and other merchandises outward bound to buy coconuts. With this prize he returned to Tortuga, where he was received with joy by the inhabitants, they congratulating his happy success. And their own private interest. Obviously, he's going to spend all that money while he's in town, so they're all like, hell yeah. Come on down, right? That's too funny. He stayed not long there, but designed to equip a fleet sufficient to transport 500 men and necessities. Thus provided, he resolved to pillage both cities, towns, and villages, and finally to take Maracaibo itself. For this purpose, he knew the island of Tortuga would afford him many resolute and courageous men fit for such enterprises. Yep, that's the land of pirates and fucking buccaneers right there. Yeah, the only better place he could be would be Jamaica, but Tortuga is where like all the original old salty fuckers are at, like all the hardcore fuckers are at. That's wild, man. Yeah. And said that besides the fact he also had in his service several prisoners well acquainted with the ways and places designed upon. So he had people that he had taken prisoners that knew all about the places that he wanted to go and rob. Yeah, and he pulled up in Tortuga with a bunch of loot, some shit that he stole, and put together a team of people so he could go and rob and hit shit on land and fuck those people up that were going to kill him. It's wild, man. Yeah, I got you, Sybil. I've seen that stuff on YouTube. I know where you're talking about. That's different than the Tortuga that's above Haiti. Those are two totally different places. The Isle of Tortuga is just north of Haiti. It's the one you're talking about is off the coast of Florida, like the Keys or some shit. I think it's like way down by the Keys. Yeah, KD, Tortuga was pirate heaven. Sure was. That's where the original Buccaneers, that's where it all really started. Before it ever branched out anywhere else, Tortuga was number one. That's where the very first act of buccaneering type piracy went down. I told that story in the beginning of this. Yeah, we went through all the very, very beginnings of that stuff at the top of this episode. Yeah. All right, let me see. This is I guess we can finish this one. Let me see. I think some of this might get into like describing the place. I don't really want to get into that. All right, well, let's see. Yeah, I think I can skip it. Maybe this will be shorter than I thought. I can probably go ahead and do this. All right, cool. Let me grab a drink, hit my bowl a couple of times. Oh, I got you, KD. Yeah. Well, if you go back and listen to the beginning, yeah, we started off with an introduction to what book we're reading from and how he ended up where, the author, the narrator, the guy that put all this together, the first account or the real, true, authentic account of a buccaneer. His name's John Esquemeling. we did like a whole introduction on him and how he ended up in Tortuga. And he got there in July 1666. He left France May 1666, and he arrived in Tortuga in July 1666. Yeah, in service of the French East India Company. And then they lost a lot of their holdings. They demanded that everything be sold, including their servants, and he got sold to a fucking total piece of shit that treated him like garbage. He almost died. The guy sold him off to a surgeon. He wanted to get some money out of him instead of just having a dead slave. He figured he might as well get some of his money back. So he sold this guy to a surgeon. The surgeon nursed him back to health, and for a year used him as an assistant, as a servant that way, but he taught him the trade through a quick apprenticeship, a 1-year apprenticeship on how to be a barber surgeon. And then he set him free. And he said, he just made him promise that he would come back one day when he got some money and pay him the 100 pieces of bait that he had paid for him so that he would get his money back. But he set him free. And our guy that wrote this, John Esquemeling, he literally went straight down to the docks and he joined the Brethren of the Coast. He had absolutely nothing. So he was just like, fuck it, I'm going to go and be a barber surgeon for the pirates. And he got accepted into the Brethren, and he was with all of the most famous pirates you've heard of. He was on their ships. He worked with these guys. He was on all of the biggest raids. Maracaibo, fucking Panama, both times. Sailed with Captain Morgan even, and all that shit's in this book too. And it's an authentic, like I said, there's 4 books written. I've said it several times in this episode, so you'll hear it later if you go back and listen, but there's 4 authentic accounts. This guy is the one with no embellishment, the longest one, and the most historically accurate. And it's the only one you'll find with a first-hand account of the guy that was like actually there and with these people. It's fucking incredible. Oh, the Caribbean would have been hell back then. Of course. Yeah. There's like a million ways to die. No fucking, the resources were like only consolidated in certain places. And if your name was bad or like you couldn't just show up in these places and do business legally, that was a rough life, man. All the servitude that was going on. You could be sold, like they were talking about, you could be sold just for having a debt, even with like a tavern. The people in the town would grab you up, sell you for that fucking debt. Crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff. All right, we'll do one more small part of this, and then we'll call it a night. We'll just, because it's a continuation of Lolonois. So we'll go ahead through him equipping a fleet to land upon the Spanish islands of America with intent to rob, sack, and burn whatsoever he met with. That's the name of the chapter. Chapter 7, Lolonois equips a fleet to land upon the Spanish islands of America with intent to rob, sack, and burn whatsoever he met with. All right. Of this design, Lolonois giving notice to all the pirates, whether at home or abroad, he got together in a little while above 400 men, beside which there was then in Tortuga another pirate named Michael de Basco, who by his piracy had got riches sufficient to live at ease and go no more abroad, having withal the office of major of the island. So this dude was major of the island of the pirates, dude. How cool is that? But seeing the great prep, and he's like retired, he got all kinds of loot and he just kicked back. He was like, I'm fucking chilling, right? But hearing about all the great preparations that Lolonois made for his expedition, he decided to join him and offered him that if he could make his chief captain by land, seeing he knew the country very well and all its avenues, that he would share in his fortunes and go with him. They agreed upon articles to the great joy of Lolonois. Yeah, he's like, dude, I've got this one of the best in the business, right? He wants to come and be a part of my robbery. Let's go. Yeah, he said he was a great joy to Lolonois, knowing that Basco had great done actions in Europe and had the reputation of a good soldier besides. Thus they had all embarked in 8 vessels, that of Lolonois being the greatest, having 10 guns of indifferent carriage. All things being ready and the whole company on board, they set sail together about the end of April, being in all 660 people. They steered for that part called Bayala, north of Hispaniola. Here they took into their company some French hunters who voluntarily offered themselves, and here they provided themselves with victuals and necessaries for their voyage. From hence they sailed again the last of July, and steered directly to the eastern cape of the isle called Punta de Espada. Hereabouts espying a ship from Puerto Rico bound for New Spain, laden with coconuts, Lolonois commanded the rest of the fleet to wait for him near Savona on the east of Cape Punta Espada, he alone intending to take the said vessel. The Spaniards, though they had been in sight full 2 hours, and knew them to be pirates, yet would not flee, but prepared to fight, being well armed and provided. The combat lasted 3 hours, and then they surrendered. This ship had 16 guns and 50 fighting men aboard. They found in her 120,000 weight of cocoa, 40,000 pieces of 8, and the value of 10,000 more in jewels. Lolonois sent the vessel presently to Tortuga to be unloaded, with orders to return as soon as possible to Savona, where he would wait for them. Meanwhile, the rest of the fleet, being arrived at Savona, met another Spanish vessel coming from Coman, with military provisions to Hispaniola and money to pay the garrisons there. This vessel they also took, without any resistance whatsoever. Though mounted with 8 guns, in it were 7,000 weight of powder, a great number of muskets, and like things, with 12,000 pieces of 8 besides. These successes encouraged the pirates, they seeming very lucky beginnings, especially finding their fleet pretty well recruited in a little bit of time. For the first ship arriving at Tortuga, the governor ordered it to be instantly unladen, and then soon after sent right back with fresh provisions and other necessaries. This ship he chose for himself and gave that which he commanded to his comrade Anthony. Being thus recruited with men, in lieu of them he had lost in taking the prizes, and by sickness he found himself now in a good condition to set sail for Maracaibo. For anybody that doesn't know, Maracaibo is in the north of Venezuela. Let's see. He's going to describe the island and shit. We don't need to worry about them. Let's scroll down. Okay. Lolonois, arriving at the Gulf of Venezuela, cast anchor with his whole fleet out of sight of the village or the watch isle. Next day, very early, he set sail thence with all his ships for the lake of Maracaibo, where they cast anchor again. Then they landed their men, with design to attack first the fortress that commanded the bar, therefore called De la Barra. This fort consists only of several great baskets of earth placed on a rising ground, planted with 16 great guns, with several other heaps of earth round about for covering their men. The pirates, having landed a league off of the fort, advanced by degrees forward. But the governor, having espied their landing, had placed an ambush to cut them off from behind. This the pirates discovered, and getting there before, they defeated it so entirely that not one man could retreat to the castle. This done, Lolonois with his companions advanced immediately to the fort, and after a fight of almost 3 hours with the unusual desperation of this sort of people, they became masters of it themselves, without any other arms than swords and pistols. While they were fighting, those who were there routed the ambush, not being able to get into the castle, so they returned into Maracaibo itself, in great confusion and disorder, crying that the pirates will presently be here with 2,000 men. The city, having formerly been taken by this kind of people and sacked to the utmost, had still an idea of that misery, so that upon this dismal news they endeavored to escape towards Gibraltar in their boats and canoes, carrying with them all goods and money that they could. Being come to Gibraltar, they told how the fortress was taken and nothing had been saved, nor any persons escaped. Hang on, what's this say? Oh, you're just talking about, yeah, the hot weather and all that shit. People got sick with all the different. Yeah, I mean, people got sick for a number of reasons, man. They had like food, bad water, germs. I mean, the shit was filthy as fuck, right? People traveling all over the place, coming into contact with new kinds of stuff they have no immunity to. Yeah, it's bad news, bro. All right, so the castle thus taken by the pirates, they presently signaled to the ships that their victory, they should come farther in without fear of danger. So they're calling in their ships that are out of the ocean. They're like, hey, we took the fort. Come on in, guys. Everything's great. The rest of that day was spent in ruining and demolishing the said castle. They nailed the guns and burnt as much as they could not carry away, burying the dead and sending on board the fleet the wounded. Next day, very early, they weighed anchor and steered altogether towards Maracaibo, about 6 leagues distant from that fort. But the wind failing that day, they could advance only a little, being forced to expect the tide. Next morning, they came in sight of the town and prepared for landing under the protection of their own guns, fearing the Spaniards might have laid an ambush in the woods. So they put their men into canoes, brought just for that purpose, and landed where they thought most convenient, shooting still furiously with their great guns of those in the canoes. Half only went ashore, the other half remained aboard. They fired from the ships as fast as possible towards the woody part of the shore, but could discover nobody. Then they entered the town, whose inhabitants, as I told you, were retired to the woods and Gibraltar with their wives, women, and families. Their houses they left well provided with victuals as flour, bread, pork, brandy, wine, and poultry. With these the pirates fell to making good cheer, for in 4 weeks before they had no opportunity of filling their stomachs with such plenty. That's crazy, man. So they came into the town, everybody had left and run and left everything exactly where it was, right? So their houses were still full of like food and wine and all the shit that they had. You know, people only took what they could and ran. And the pirates came into all of these. It's like the whole town's empty. They were just like walking into houses like, yeah, I live here now, right? Like eating all the food, sleeping in your bed. This shit's crazy. That shit's nuts, man. Imagine that, the whole town being empty. You guys are just like walking in and out of doors, just like, hey, what's up? Nobody's in here. Oh, cool, man. They got that good food. Nuts, man. They instantly possessed themselves of the best houses in the town. That's exactly what I was just saying. And then they placed sentinels wherever they thought convenient. The great church served them for their main guard. Next day, they sent out 160 men to find some of the inhabitants in the woods thereabout. These returned the same night, bringing with them 20,000 pieces of eight, several mules laden with household goods and merchandise, and 20 prisoners, men, women, and children. So they found all those people out in the woods and took all their shit and brought it back. Some of these were put to the rack to make them confess where they had hid the rest of their goods, but they could extort very little from them. Lolonois, who valued not murdering, though in cold blood, 10 or 12 Spaniards, drew his cutlass and hacked one to pieces before the rest, saying, if you do not confess and declare where you have hid the rest of your goods, I will do the like to all of your companions. At last, amongst these horrible cruelties and inhuman threats, were promised to show the place where the rest of the Spaniards were hid. But those that were fled, having intelligence of it, changed their place and buried the remnant of their riches underground, so that the pirates could not find them out. Man. Wow. All right. So after the pirates had been there 15 days, So they were in Maracaibo for 15 days. They went out in the woods. They found these people, brought them in, brought in all their shit. There was still a big group of people out there in the woods, and they changed places real fast and buried the stuff that they had so that the pirates can't have it. That's wild, man. So after the pirates had been there 15 days in Maracaibo, they resolved for Gibraltar. But the inhabitants, having received intelligence of it, and that they intended afterwards to go to Merida, gave notice of it to the governor there, who was a valiant soldier and had been an officer in Flanders. His answer was, he would have them take no care, for he hoped in a little while to exterminate the pirates himself. Whereupon he came to Gibraltar with 400 men well armed, ordering at the same time the inhabitants to put themselves in arms, so that in all he made 800 fighting men. With the same speed he raised a battery towards the sea, mounted with 20 guns, covered with great baskets of earth. Another battery he placed in another place, mounted with 8 guns. This done, he barricaded a narrow passage to the town through which the pirates must pass, opening at the same time another through much dirt and mud into the wood, totally unknown to the pirates. The pirates, ignorant of these preparations, having embarked all their prisoners and booty, took their way towards Gibraltar. Being come in sight of the place, they saw the royal standard hanging forth, and that those of the town designed to defend their houses. Lolonois, seeing this, called a council of war, what they ought to do, telling his officers and mariners that the difficulty of the enterprise would be very great, seeing that the Spaniards had so much time to put themselves in a posture of defense, and had got a good body of men together with much ammunition. But, notwithstanding, he said, have good courage. We must either defend ourselves like good soldiers or lose our lives with all the riches we have got. Do as I shall, and do as I shall do, who am your captain. At other times who have fought with fewer men than we have in our company at present, and yet we have overcome greater numbers than there possibly can be in this town. The more there are, the more glory and the greater the riches we shall gain. The pirates supposed that all of the riches of the inhabitants of Maracaibo were transported to Gibraltar, or at least the greatest part. After this speech, they all promised to follow and obey him. Lolonois made answer, "'Tis well, but know, all of you know this withal, that the first man who shall show any fear or the least apprehension thereof, I will pistol him with my own hands." So he says, all right, man, all you guys say you're down. If we're going to go fucking do this, if you show any fear or you fuck around or you punk out, I'm going to shoot you myself. There you go. With this resolution, they cast anchor nigh the shore, near 3/4 of a league from the town. Next day before sunrising, they landed 380 pirates, well provided and armed, with everyone with a cutlass and 1 or 2 pistols, and significant powder and bullet for 30 charges. Here they all shook hands in testimony of good courage and began their march. Lolonois speaking thus, "Come, my brethren, follow me and have good courage." They followed their guide, who, believing he led them well, brought them to the way which the governor had barricaded. Not being able to pass that way, they went to the other newly made in the wood among the mire, which the Spaniards could shoot into at pleasure. But the pirates, full of courage, cut down the branches of trees and threw them on the way, that they might not stick in the dirt. Meanwhile, those of Gibraltar fired with their great guns so furiously they could scarce hear nor see for the noise and smoke. Being past the wood, they came on firm ground, where they met with a battery of 6 guns, which immediately the Spaniards discharged upon them, all loaded with small bullets and pieces of iron, and the Spaniards, sallying forth, set upon them with such fury as caused the pirates to give way, few of them caring to advance towards the fort, many of them being already killed and wounded. This made them go back to seek another way, but the Spaniards, having cut down many trees to hinder the passage, they could find none, but were forced to return to that they had left. Here the Spaniards continued to fire as before, nor would they sally out of their batteries to attack them any more. Lolonois and his companions, not being able to grip up the baskets of earth, were compelled to use an old strategy wherewith at last they deceived and overcame the Spaniards. Lolonois retired suddenly with all his men, making show as if he fled. Hereupon the Spaniards, crying out, "They flee! They flee! Let us follow them!" sallied forth with great disorder to the pursuit. Being drawn to some distance from the batteries, which was the pirates' only design, they quickly turned upon them unexpectedly with sword in hand and killed above 200 men. And thus, fighting their way through those that remained, they possessed themselves of the batteries quickly. The Spaniards that remained abroad, giving themselves over for lost, fled into the woods themselves now. Those in the battery of 8 guns surrendered themselves, obtaining quarter for their lives. The pirates, being now become masters of the town, pulled down the Spanish colors and set up their own, taking prisoners as many as they could find. These they carried to the great church, where they raised a battery of several great guns, fearing lest the Spaniards that were fled through might come back to rally and come upon them again. But the next day, being all fortified, their fears were over. They gathered the dead to bury them, being above 500 Spaniards, dude. Holy shit. Besides the wounded in town and those that died of their wounds in the woods. Man, that shit is crazy, dude. Hundreds and hundreds of people fucking died in this. It's crazy. The pirates had also above 150 prisoners and nigh 500 slaves, many women and children. That shit's fucked up. Of their own companions, only 40 were killed. Wow. Wow. Yeah, so they killed like 500-600 people on the other side. Because they said it was like 500 that they had the bodies, and like a bunch of people died in the woods of their wounds they didn't find or mess with. A bunch more wounded. Only 40 pirates got killed. 80 got wounded. That shit's crazy. They put the slain Spaniards into 2 great boats, and carrying them a quarter of a league to sea, they sunk them. This done, they gathered all of the plate, the household stuff, and merchandise that they could or thought convenient to carry away. The Spaniards who had anything left had hid it carefully, but the unsatisfied pirates, not contented with the riches they had got, sought for more goods and merchandise, not sparing those who lived in the fields, such as hunters and planters. They had scarce between 18 days on the place when the greatest part of the prisoners died from hunger. For in the town were very few provisions, especially of meat, though they had some, but no sufficient quantity of flour or meal, and that was the pirates. All that shit the pirates took for themselves. They also took all of the swine, cows, sheep, and poultry without allowing any share to the poor prisoners. For these they only provided some small quantity of mules and asses' meat. Oh, wow. It's like donkey and mule meat. And many who could not eat of that loathsome provision died from hunger, their stomachs not being accustomed to such food. Of the prisoners, many also died under the torment they sustained to make them discover their money or jewels. And of these, some had none nor knew of any, and others, denying what they knew, endured such horrible deaths. Yeah, they tortured a lot of those people bad, real bad. Finally, after having been in possession of the town for 4 entire weeks, they sent 4 of the prisoners to the Spaniards that were fled to the woods, demanding of them a ransom for not burning the town. These guys are intense, man. All right, we've been here for a month. We're pretty sure we've robbed and sacked everything, but we know some of you guys are still hiding in the woods, and we know you guys still have some money, so this is what we're going to tell you what. You bring us 10,000 more pieces of 8, scrap, dig it up, figure out where it's at. You guys put it in a hat. Everybody put in your share. You do that, and we won't burn your town to the ground when we leave. What the fuck? That's wild, man. The sum demanded was 10,000 pieces of 8, which if not sent, they threatened to reduce their town to ashes. For bringing in this money, they allowed them only 2 days, but the Spaniards not having been able to gather so punctually such a sum, the pirates fired many parts of the town, whereupon the inhabitants begged them to help quench the fire, and the ransom should be readily paid. That's crazy. It says one part of the town was completely ruined. There was nothing that could have been done about it. It all got burnt straight to the fucking ground, including the church that belonged to the monastery. It was also burnt down. And after they received the said sum, they carried aboard all of the riches that they had got, with a great number of slaves which had not paid the ransom. For all the prisoners had sums of money set upon them, and the slaves were also commanded to be redeemed. Hence they returned to Maracaibo, where being arrived, they found a general consternation in the whole city, to which they sent 3 or 4 prisoners to tell the governor and inhabitants that they should bring them now 30,000 pieces of 8 aboard their ships for a ransom of their houses, otherwise they will be sacked anew and burnt. Dude, so they left they had robbed and did all that shit to Maracaibo. They fucked that place up. They leave. They go to Gibraltar. They fuck that place up, demand all that money at the very end to not burn it down. They come back to Maracaibo. They just fucked this place up. The people came out of the woods to come back in the town thinking the pirates were gone. No, pirates showed right back up. And they said, I'll tell you what, guys. We know you hid some shit. We know you brought it back with you. Give us all the shit that you've got, or we're just going to rob you and rob your houses again. And this time we're going to set them all on fire. These guys were off the chain, man. Told you this guy Lolonois was brutal. Fucking brutal. Among these debates, a party of pirates came on shore. Right? So while they're talking back and forth, the party of the pirates came on shore, carried away the images, pictures, and bells of the great church aboard, and took them aboard the fleet. The Spaniards were sent to demand the sum foresaid returned, with orders to make some agreement, who concluded with the pirates to give for their ransom and liberty 20,000 pieces of 8 and 500 cows, provided they should commit no more hostilities. It says so. They were like, listen, man, we don't have all that money, right? The Spaniards, when the pirates came back and they went on shore and they had a little talk, they were like, listen, man, we don't have all that money. We've got some shit, but what we can do is we can give you 20,000 and we can give you 500 cows, right? But if we make this deal, they say, you can't do nothing else, right? You can't fuck anything else up. You can't burn anything else down. You can't rob not a single person. We're good. We're going to give you this money. We're going to give you these cows, and we're fucking solid. You can't rob anything. Just leave it all, everything alone, right? So, all right, let me find it. I just fucking scrolled down from it. I'm sorry, guys. Hang on. Says, okay, so we'll give you all that stuff, but no more hostilities, and you have to literally leave as soon as we give you the money and cattle. No fucking around. You have to get the fuck out of here. You got to leave. The one and the other being delivered, the whole fleet set sail, causing great joy to the inhabitants of Maracaibo to see themselves finally quit of the pirates. But 3 days after, they renewed their fears with admiration, seeing the pirates appear again and re-enter the port with all of their ships. But these apprehensions vanished upon hearing one of the pirates' errand, who came ashore from Lolonois to demand a skillful pilot to conduct one of the greatest ships over the dangerous bank that lied at the very entrance of the lake. So they went to leave, but they couldn't figure out where to go. They couldn't get out of the lake. Shit got shallow, right? They needed a local pilot. They needed somebody that knew the local waters to come out there on their ship to guide them through back into the ocean so that they could leave. Okay. They made the petition to the town. Of course, it was instantly granted. They were like, yeah, we want you out of here. We'll send you somebody that knows exactly how to, we're going to tell you exactly just the right way to go. They had now been 2 full months in these towns, wherein they committed these cruel and insolent crimes. Departing there, they took their course to Hispaniola and arrived there in 8 days, casting anchored in a port called Isla de la Vaca. That is another, if you remember that as we go through these episodes, that's a very, 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 very important little island. Isla de la Vaca. A lot of major, huge fucking pirates and pirate meetings, like of the Brethren of the Coast, including like Captain Morgan and all the big ones. They would have their meetings in the fucking bay right there. It's basically called Cow Island, but in Spanish, it's Isla de la Vaca. It's the island of the cow. Some of the biggest pirate meetings went down in this little bay, especially like right before huge raids. Amazing. And you can check, this place is really cool. You should look at it on Google Maps or look up a couple of videos on it. It's fucking awesome. Check the bay out, look at the beach, look at the little island. Really fucking cool. All right, so it says this island is strictly inhabited by French buccaneers who mostly sell the meat that they hunt to pirates and others who now and then put in there to victual or trade. Here they unloaded their whole bunch of riches, and the usual storehouse of the pirates being commonly under the shelter of the buccaneers, right? So they have storehouses at the Isla de la Vaca, and anything you put in those storehouses is protected by the buccaneers that live there. Pretty cool. Okay, so once everything was put ashore and put in these warehouses that were protected by the buccaneers, they started to divvy up all of their prizes according to the order and degree of everyone, and has been mentioned before. Having made an exact calculation of all their plunder, they found in ready money 260,000 pieces of 8. This being divided, everyone received also for his share in money, as also in silk, linen, and other commodities, to the value of above another 100 pieces of 8 or so. Those who had been wounded received their first part after the rate mentioned before for the loss of their limbs. Then they weighed all of the solid gold and uncoined metals, reckoning 10 pieces of 8 to a pound. The jewels were also priced indifferently, either too high or too low, by people that didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. That shit's funny. By reason of their ignorance, is what he says. This done, everyone was put to his oath again that he had not smuggled anything from the common stock. Hence they proceeded to the dividend of the shares of such as were dead in battle and otherwise. These shares were then given to their friends to be delivered in due time to their nearest relations or their apparent lawful heirs. They were super fair, man. Every time you get down to it, these people had rules, and they followed those rules, and they took care of their own. They took care of their people, man. Yeah. Even if you died, they gave your share to your friend, and it was his job to make sure that it got back to your family or your relation or your lawful heir. It's cool, man. The whole dividend being finished, they then set sail back to Tortuga. Here they arrived a month after, to the great joy of most of the island, for as to the common pirates, in 3 weeks they had scarce any money left, having spent it all in things of little value, or lost it at play. Here had arrived not long before them 2 French ships with wine and brandy, and such like commodities, whereby these liquors at the arrival of the pirates were indifferent cheap. But this lasted not long, for soon after they were enhanced extremely, a gallon of brandy being sold for 4 pieces of 8. So 2 big ships had just come into port at Tortuga and sold a bunch of wine, right? The whole island had just got restocked with wine. Before the pirates got there, before Lolonois, right, this big raiding party, this particular set of pirates, right? There's always pirates in Tortuga. But before this big raiding party with Lolonois, right, they've got all this money. Everybody's stocked with money. They just got their shares. They're ready to fucking party. The pirates that were on the island already had run out of money. So the bars there were selling wine cheap, right? For like a piece of 8, whatever, a gallon or whatever it said. Yeah, a gallon. A gallon of brandy was being sold for 1 piece of 8. After the rich pirates showed up, they started instantly selling them for 4 pieces of 8 a gallon. Bastards. Like, oh, quick, these guys are rich. Make sure everything's way more expensive. They're going to spend it anyway. Fucking nuts. What a bunch of bad. Hey, I mean, get it, right? I guess. That's funny. Yeah. The governor of the island bought of the pirates the whole cargo of the ship laden with cocoa, giving for that rich commodity scarce the 20th part of its worth. Thus they made shift to lose and spend the riches they had got in much less time than they were purchased. The taverns and stews, according to the custom of pirates, got the greatest part, so that soon after they were forced to seek more by the same unlawful means that they had got by the former. I think we'll leave that. The next chapter continues on and into his death, but I think we're gonna leave that for another time. That's a pretty long chapter, and I think we'll just finish up with him next time. Oh yeah, they had laws and codes and all that. They stuck very, very close to them. We had if you like I said, if you go back, Katie, and listen to the beginning, I know you missed, like you said, like the first hour or so. There's basically a whole chapter from the brethren, or for the rules and how they actually like stocked their ships, the regulations they put in place, the exact amounts of money that you got for losing certain limbs, for your right arm, your left arm, even down to your finger or your eye, your legs. They have exact figures, what you would get if it was like your ship, if you were the captain, if you were the surgeon, how much they would give you for your box of medicines and things like that. Yeah. They were all about sticking to a code. Yeah, I love that stuff, man. All those stories are super cool. We're still in the very, very beginnings of it. We're still in the very beginnings of it. Like I said, I think that's we're leaving off on chapter 8. And this is just the beginning. These are the first guys that Judas sailing with. The first guys he's exposed to, because like I said, John Esquemeling's on these boats. He's in these raids. It's the guy that's writing this book, telling you what happened, telling you where they were. It's really fucking cool. It's really cool. And you can imagine yourself being there for this shit. Like the way he describes it all. He's very good at like painting those pictures. And if you have a strong imagination, which I do. I know a lot of other people do. And it's cool to imagine, being there so fucking long ago. Crazy long time ago. Like I said, he arrived there in 1666, man, with those original buccaneers. Yeah, KD, like there was a time like one of my grandmothers loved what she called swashbucklers. She loved swashbuckling movies. Old black and white pirate movies and stuff like that. Really, I mean, she would even watch anything with sword fighting, but she did like the pirate movies and like Three Musketeers type stuff. She loved swashbuckling stuff, she called it. And naturally, I got into it. So did my brother. We both liked all that stuff. We loved it. And they had a period in time where they did make a good number of like cool old pirate flicks, but that, I mean, obviously a super fucking long time ago. But they did, a lot of black and white stuff. And I for one, I'm a fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean series that they did. I pretty much like all those stuff. And then when it comes to the books and stuff, I just stick to these. Like I said, you got William Dampier. He was the pirate scientist, or the scientist pirate. You've got the works of Daniel Defoe. He was a famous map maker who worked with many people that were on these voyages that brought him information for maps, brought him maps of different places. People like William Dampier, people like John Esquemeling. But yeah, then you had the works of William Dampier. He was out and about, right? So Daniel Defoe, William Dampier, John Esquemeling, and then the short tale of Lionel Wafer. But those are the only four that are authentic, that are authenticated firsthand accounts of people that were on these voyages with these pirates playing the game. And the one that I'm reading tonight is the number one source as an authentic firsthand account of these tales and this life that he led. Yeah, KD, for sure. Yeah, map maker. Yeah, really cool, man. And he would pay people, for all that information. People would come from all over the place that were on all kinds of gnarly adventures, man. Because he wrote a few books, but he wrote two mainly on the pirate tales and the stories and stuff like that, and his adventures and adventures of others. Like I said, like John Esquemeling, like William Dampier, like Lionel Wafer. But he has a couple of books for the pirates, man. He wrote a few books, but a couple of them are for the pirates and the stories and stuff. They're really neat. William Dampier is very cool. That guy would have been a wild son of a bitch to be around. I'll tell you that. But an absolutely amazing scientist, man. He contributed so much information to the world back then. Yeah. And then this guy, like I said, the book that we're reading tonight, this guy was just a badass. Yeah. This guy's just a badass. Yeah, well, if you like stuff like that, Katie, then you got to read this book because I got, the book that we're reading tonight, I'm saying to you, you got to read. I mean, like I said, this is the number one source for any kind of first-hand account stuff, and it's called "The Pirates of Panama" or "The Buccaneers of America: A True Account of the Famous Adventures and Daring Deeds of Sir Henry Morgan and Other Notorious Freebooters of the Spanish Main," by John Esquemeling, and it's Esquemeling. But that's literally the how a lot of those old books are, like with the really long titles. I was explaining that at the beginning of the show too. Like everything I just said to you, that's literally the long ass title of this book. But if you just look up "The Pirates of Panama" and John Esquemeling, then there's free versions of it. I think like Gutenberg is good. Gutenberg. Just look up John Esquemeling, Pirates of Panama, Gutenberg. Gutenberg is a great free library that has tons of old, hard to find books and manuscripts and even like pamphlets and shit like that. Oh, William Wallace. Yeah, I mean, there's always, you get down to the technical, or you just get down to the literal definition of pirate. And yeah, I mean, that shit's been going on ever since humans were in a boat and they saw somebody else that was in a boat that had something they wanted. So yeah, of course, there's been pirates in like every nation, but we're talking about a specific window in time. A certain group of people at a certain time in history. Yeah. Yeah, Katie, I like that site. Is like if I go looking for old stuff, that's usually like the first place I'll try just to see if it's going to be truly convenient this time. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have to go on the crazy search, but it's a good place to at least start because it'll surprise you. Oh, cool, awesome! I don't have to go searching for this. They actually have this. They have a lot of really weird, rare, and old shit on that site, which I'm very appreciative of. Then there's a few sites like that. depending on how deep into like really weird and obscure type of stuff that you're looking for that might have been scanned into a library someplace. That's really what you're hoping for with a lot of old manuscripts, and especially those pamphlets and shit. You're hoping somebody scanned it in or made a digital copy of some old crazy shit. Oh yeah, for sure. Pirates absolutely everywhere. There's stories of pirates in Roman times and shit like that. I think Caesar got grabbed by pirates. Yeah. Yeah, piracy's always been a thing, no matter what. It's always around. It's always around. But yeah, so that concludes our show tonight. Like I said, we're going to do a lot of episodes. We're going to continue like right where we left off in the next one, because we're going to make our way through this book and tell all the badass pirate stories. We're going to tell all of them. And then, like I said, we'll work our way through the top 4 with this series, you know. So there'll be a lot of episodes of this, and I'm not going to promise that we're going to do it next week. So I'm still trying to figure out whether I'm going to do this like every other week and then like Alexander every other week, or if I am just going to do like one series at a time. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, I appreciate everybody coming through, and anybody that's into the pirate stuff, leave a comment maybe about any of the stories that I told tonight. You know, if you had a question or you enjoyed one of the stories, or you thought one of the pirate tales was fucking extra cool, let me know which one. You know, let me know what you found interesting about all the stuff we talked about. If you need any information or want me to help point you in the direction of certain things, just let me know. Anybody that hears this or was listening, leave a comment, let me know. Hit the like button and all that kind of fun stuff. And we'll be back. Either way, I might even be on tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Wednesday, so I might actually be on tomorrow night. We'll see what happens. I might pop on. Depends on if I have time and if I end up chatting with anybody else. I think Gigi was maybe wanting to chat tomorrow. Sometimes MRE and I chat on Wednesdays. We'll see. Sometimes I just do a hell chat. But either way, everybody have a great night. We'll talk soon. Be safe.